Good evening. It's 7 p.m. and getting ready to have our Board of Select meeting, January 21st. I don't know where this month is going, but it is going. And keeping with the agenda, Tina, do we have a warrant?
Yep, yes we do. Tonight's warrant is $567,913.93, of which the town payroll is $154,970.31, and there is no school payroll with this warrant.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Mrs. Hine.
I do not have any public comment tonight.
No
Thank you.
public comment. John?
None this evening, Mr. Chairman.
None. Okay. I think I will mention about the Super Bowl coming up, right? February 1st. We're going to be somewhere else, my wife's retirement party, but I wish everyone a good time at going to the Super Bowl. I know it's well attended, and the money raised from the soup, which is donated by several restaurants here in the area, in Holliston, and the bread is donated, and there are sponsors on the soup bowl also, and we thank all of them, and the money goes to the food pantry, so please support it if you can. And that's all I have for public comment. Jeff, any public comment?
No, I do not.
Anyone from the audience? Any public comments at all? No? Okay, thank you. Report of the town administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an update on the status of the animal control officer. I received an email from the police chief in Ashland. He reported that he's working on the revised MOA, and he said that it's going to take longer than he thought it would take to develop the MOA to better reflect what's currently taking place today versus what it was 10 years ago or over 10 years ago now.
Right.
But we're going to go, at least for now, with the baseline budget for FY20,
Okay.
and perhaps make some adjustments depending on what the MOA and what the negotiations are. In that
Point of correction, you said go with the baseline budget.
21.
21.
21,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Is that something that we can vote on tonight, or?
Sure, that would be great. I mean, I know the Finance Committee is looking forward to getting that budget,
Okay.
so.
And we have some other items in the budget, so.
Correct, yep.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the guideline budget at 1%. Was it 1%?
Yes, 1%.
I can't remember what the total was.
38,300.
What he said for FY21 animal control.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, that's great. So next Tuesday at 10 a.m., we'll be meeting with the DPW union for our second round of negotiations with Labor Council. And we'll be receiving their proposals, and Sean will be present, as he has been previously, and we're looking forward to getting that moving. There'll be regarding the landfill solar project, solar field project, there'll be a meeting next Thursday at 2:30 p.m. with Sol Systems and Beth Greenblatt, our consultant. And we're going to be developing a timeline and a framework for moving forward on that project, so we can get that posted to the website, so
that'd be
people
nice.
can follow what's going on with that.
And you were going to post that for the three of us if we're all able to attend?
Yes, I'm not sure if I did that, but I can make sure it's done.
That's next week.
Next Thursday at 2:30 p.m. We were notified that the police union would like to commence negotiations for their contract, and I responded back to the union president that we are willing to start that at any time, basically. And I've not received a response back, but I'm sure I will very shortly. Just as a reminder, this coming Friday, January 24th at 4 p.m., the School Strategic Improvements Initiative meeting will be held at the library at the high school. So anyone who is interested in attending that one, if I need to post it, let me know. If not, then I'm going to try to make it. I usually make it, but not always.
I'm curious on feedback from that meeting. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I'll be at work, but
Okay.
there's some content there that Ms. Rappy indicated would be useful for us down the road. So anything you can share? Are you planning to go?
Yeah, but I'll be there late because I'm coming from Boston from the MMA conference, so I'll get there probably like 5.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tomorrow afternoon, I'm meeting with our new sustainabilities coordinator. I notified him that he had been the preferred consultant, and so I'll be meeting with him at 2 o'clock. And we also received today a $25,000 check from the town of Sherburne, which is our portion of the allocation. So the funding is in place. The planning meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And we'll work on an agreement, a contract between him and the town, and we'll get going. Finally, we received notification of the school's intent to ask the Board of Selectmen to support in a second SOI, as I think you may have seen in your email. That's scheduled for the 3rd of February. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions from the town administrator? No. Okay, appreciate it. Karen Sherman wanted to see us early, but she's not here yet.
Maybe this is John Love from the chairman of the ZBA.
Oh,
I
perfect.
think that's
Want to
what's
come up?
doing
Sure.
our budgets and that's it.
Yes, if you wanted to go over the zoning board of appeals budget?
Ours is a quick, short one, so.
Sure.
All right.
Can you make sure the mic's a little, yeah.
Sorry about that. We basically took our budget and with Karen and with the planning board, who we share resources in terms of administrative, which is most of our budget, they split it up. We kept ours at a little bit below last year's, I believe, or no, same as last year. We haven't used it all the last few years, and I think it's how they make the split. I think the amount's basically the same. Some goes to the planning board, some goes to us. And I'll leave that magic up to Karen, but we kept that the same. I think the other items, we typically budget some professional services in the event that we need to have legal representation on anything, and then either use it or don't use it if nothing comes up in that year. Last year, for instance, we didn't touch it,
Okay.
but rather have something in there if we need it and give it back than have to come looking for money that doesn't exist.
Can you tell the folks back home that are watching some of the highlights of your budget and what's the total budget for the year?
Sure, be happy to. What we've asked for is, as I said, the largest part is clerical salaries at $7,229. Again, we share some of the planner and the clerical staff with
Right.
the planning board. We've asked for $3,500 in professional services, which is that in case we need to use a lawyer if we get into a legal issue with something. And $528 for communications, which is basically mailings to get our materials to us and back. And then $150 in office supplies, and that's it.
Okay.
So the total is $11,407.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
So the one, you hit the 1% guideline by applying that increase to the clerical salaries, John?
Yeah, I think the clerical salaries we kept where they were. I think any increases into that bucket of professional services, that's slightly higher than last year's.
So where will the clerical services get their 1% increase? On Karen's side?
Apparently, yeah, she did that split for us, so
Okay.
I think we just, I don't think there was too much concern, because we haven't hit it. If we end up canceling a meeting somewhere along the line, she budgeted hours
Yeah.
to cover which invariably we end up doing either because there is not stuff to hear or we just can't make it work, then we come out below, which has happened all the time I've been there.
And a very quick question, if I may.
Sure.
How much have you spent out of the legal account in the last 3 years?
The last 3 years, so we have I don't believe, in 2019, we spent 3,187. The year before that, 451. In 2017, 868.
So it's that
So
volatile.
it's, yeah. Again, it usually it probably comes down to if we have a case like the appeal that we had a few years back with the bird property,
Right.
then we're going to be back anyway. But
Right.
Once in a while, we've had get an opinion on a specific case or get some guidance. Or one year we had attorney come in to talk with us about changes in the state laws and spent a couple hours of his time. So that's typically what it's been.
Okay, any questions?
None, no.
Make a motion to approve the zoning board of appeals budget as presented.
Do we have a
Second.
second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Well,
Opposed?
thank you very much.
Motion carried.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, good night.
Okay, and next up, Jeff, we have our first interview for the second interview of facility manager position.
On the, since it's gonna take a minute to come in, on the ZBA spreadsheet here, they've got request and then they've got recommended for fiscal year '21. I'm not drawing a distinction between the two. Why?
They're different numbers?
Yeah,
That's a Sharon question, I'm afraid.
yeah, okay.
Hi, come on in and have a seat where
Hi,
the
how are
mic
you?
is.
Oh, John Cronin, nice to see you.
Good to see you again.
See you again.
And Tina.
Amy, how are you?
Good.
Okay, so this is a second interview for the facilities manager position, and we had the first round of interviews with the public last week, and there were 5, and we've narrowed it down to 2. So this is candidate number 1. And Tina's going to read the job description for folks to remind them what it's about, and so if you wouldn't mind doing that.
The Town of Holliston is seeking qualified candidates for the full-time position of Facilities Manager. This is a new position working initially under the direct supervision of the Director of Public Works. The preferred individual during year 1 would assess the condition of all non-school facilities. During year 2, implement a facility management plan and regular maintenance schedule of all public infrastructure. During year 3, make recommendations for expansion and oversight, including schools and parks. Minimum of a bachelor's degree or higher in engineering or related field. Facilities management certification preferred, 7 years of progressively responsible facilities maintenance experience, at least 2 years of supervisory experience, or any equivalent combination of experience and education. If not in possession upon hire, candidate will be required to attain Massachusetts Certified Public Purchasing Official certification from the state's Inspector General by year 3 of employment. Fiscal year January 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, weekly gross pay of $1,826 with benefits. The position purpose is as follows. The purpose of this position is to perform administrative and supervisory work in directing and overseeing maintenance, repair, and planning, as well as tracking of the town facilities. Must be knowledgeable in the areas of carpentry, painting, plastering, machine servicing, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, general custodial work, and facilities maintenance. The facilities manager is responsible for maintaining and improving upon the efficiency and effectiveness of the aforementioned. This position is new to Holliston and will require the development of new procedures, establishing relationships with department heads and relevant stakeholders, assessing needs of each facility and departments, and signing contracts and procuring services and inventory. This person will need to be self-motivated and able to effectively discuss needs, process, and action. This position will be approved on an initial plan to follow as it grows. It is hoped that the position will become its own department with additional resources and oversight.
And now I would ask you just to do a quick oversight of why you would like the position and a little bit of your history, because some people weren't here the first time,
Yep,
so if you
not a
don't
problem.
mind.
Not a problem.
And then we'll start with questions.
All right, yeah, no problem. My name's Greg Lester. I'm from Framingham, Mass. Born and bred in Ashland. Been in the area all my life. Been in the facilities for quite a few years, whether it be the private or the public. As far as the requirements for the job, I've had the opportunity over in Maynard to be there first, and their requirements were pretty much the same. So establishing the procedures and moving forward with the different assessments in the building, the different departments, isn't new to me. I've done it quite a bit. I did it, like I say, the private sector also. The private sector was a manufacturing facility, so along the lines of doing quality assurance work, I was responsible for the maintenance of the building and the lines of manufacturing. So I got a lot of experience with a lot of changeovers in buildings and mechanical things. And again, this is my passion. This is what I do. I'm a licensed contractor in the state of Massachusetts. I've had my own business as a carpenter. I have my hoisting license and gave up my CDL. At one time, I did have my Massachusetts procurement certifications in both 30B and 149 for construction. I have no problem taking the test again and hopefully passing again like I did the first time. I don't think the rules have changed much since then. And again, here we are today.
Great, thank you. I'm going to have John ask questions first since he wasn't here last time.
Absolutely.
John?
Hi, Greg. Good evening.
Pleasure.
So I've got several questions. There might be a little jumping around, so forgive me. And in the interest of time, I might be going a little quicker than you're accustomed to. So
Not a problem.
can we start with your resume, if you could? Your resume indicates you were Director of Facilities at the Aspet Valley Regional Vocational High School, January 2015 to the present.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Like I said, we parted ways back in the beginning of the summer.
What date was that?
April, I think it was probably May 1st, I would say, May 1st.
2019, correct?
Yes.
Were you a full-time employee at that time?
Yes, I was, yeah.
With benefits?
Yes, I was, yeah.
And can you bring me into that place in May 2019? What led to the separation?
They had gotten to a point during the upcoming fiscal year, they were going into a money crunch. They had just finished a $65 million renovation 2 years prior, and this was the time when the taxpayers were going to be hit with a substantial
So
tax
the
increase.
high school was done for 2 years at that point?
Yes, it
And
was,
you were
yeah.
in the maintenance mode at that point?
Absolutely, absolutely, yep.
Was your budget already submitted for FY20?
Yes, sir.
And
The FY20, no, we were working on it at the time in 19.
Was your position funded for FY20 to your knowledge?
That I don't know.
So you were the department head, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you prepare the budget for FY20?
Yes, for my department, sir, yes.
And did you
I was
fund
in-
your-
Yes, I
Did
was.
you fund your position?
Yes, I did. Yes, it was funded in there.
And as far as you were concerned, you were going to be looking at a job for FY20.
Yes.
So what changed?
Like I said, I'm not sure. I think it was just a decision that was made on their part to be financially responsible.
Was there any indication that they were changing these, making these changes?
Not really, no. Like I said, I think it was just mutually agreed upon that it was time. I think the major part of the construction work and everything that was done,
2 years earlier.
but we had other projects going on. We had a football field that we'd finished.
Have they since hired your replacement?
The gentleman that replaced me was with my assistant.
And did they backfill him?
No. To my knowledge now, no, not to my knowledge now.
Mr. Lefter, on your resume, there are a couple of gaps, and I just wanted to see if you could address them for me.
Yes, sir.
You were facility managers for the town of Maynard
Yes.
from July 2011 to December 2014. Prior to that, you were a self-employed contractor from February 09 to March 2011. Looks like there were a period of months here before you became the facility manager for the town of Maynard. What were you doing then?
I was working for Scott Johnson Paving. I started working as a truck driver /
Yep.
laborer for him. Like I say, again, I
That
was-
shows that you're ending in 2011 on your resume.
Yes, I ended it right before I went to Maynard. And again, I was self-employed prior to that. I had worked at Zoll Medical before that. I had worked at Wire Pro.
Zoe Medical, you worked from January 2007 to October 2007, not
Yes, sir.
quite a year.
Yep.
But prior to that, you worked as a quality assurance engineer for Luau Technologies
Yes,
from 1989 to 2006.
Yes, sir.
There was a gap between May of '06 and January of '07. What did you do during that time?
During that time, I was unemployed or self-employed.
What were the conditions under which you left Luau Technology?
Loud Technology closed their facility over in Littleton.
And you were laid off?
Laid off, yes. The
Thank
crew,
you.
everybody was laid off, yes.
Your education shows in June 2000, Facilities Management and Building Design, Northeastern University. What is that a degree, sir?
It's a certificate of achievement from Northeastern University.
Not a degree.
No, sir.
Tell me a little bit about that program, what it entailed. How long was it? What did you put into it?
About 3.5 years. It was a minimum of 2 I think, two classes per semester. There were requirements to be met, certain classes that had to be taken out of an array of classes that were offered to get this the certificate of achievement. And I'm pretty sure it was just about 2.5, almost 3 years of going to school, whether it was in Burlington or at their Dedham campus.
Moving on, if I could ask you about your management style, Mr. Lefter. How would you describe your management style?
Team-orientated. Very, like I say, coming from a manufacturing facility, team was always the critical factor in what we did, make sure that we were all on the same page and had the same directive.
How do you make sure they're on the same page?
How do I make sure?
Yes.
I'm not too sure how to make sure that they're on the same page, but I think through information.
Well, see, here in Holliston, you're going to be the only facility person, so you're going to be working with the team. How are you going to make sure the team is moving in the direction that you desire?
I'm going to say I don't know if it's the way, what I desire. I think we need to do an assessment of what's going on in the town, get it together and meet everybody, see what's going on, what everybody's needs. And
How are you going to do that?
By sending out a notification and hopefully getting all the departments together. And
Are you going to draft a plan?
I think I have some kind of a plan to go forward, but I need to assess what's going on first and kind of figure what's going on with the town.
So help me understand. So the assessment to you will include meeting with the stakeholders within Holliston.
Yes.
Okay. What's the next step? What do you do as part of that assessment?
Like I say, find out what their needs are, go physically do it myself, and there's actually firms out there that we can hire with approval and appropriations to come in and really do a thorough investigate of all the structures and mechanical systems in the buildings.
Are you capable of evaluating the systems within a building without outside assistance?
To a certain degree, yes, sir, yep.
What would be the limitations associated with that?
To get done, well, I think, I guess based on experience, I guess there might be no limitations other than physically doing the exchange work myself. Dates on equipment kind of justify age and replacement value versus repair values. Ages of buildings.
Yep.
What kind of renovations have been done in the past.
And you've spent some time looking at our portfolio of buildings, have you?
I have. I looked
Are
at
you
the town.
familiar with what we have?
Yes.
How long do you think it would take you to get through that first level of portfolio buildings and assess them?
I'd probably say at least a good 6 months, maybe, to
6 months.
do a thorough evaluation and go through them all, yes.
And what do? You're going to create some kind of a form, or are you going to create some data?
Like I say, just going around doing some basic evaluations of all the systems, list what they are, the ages of them, the
And what do
types
you
of
do with that
equipment.
information, and once it's done in 6 months?
Move that on to the town and let them know, give them a preliminary of what's going on, what we found,
Yeah.
and maybe some small items that we can probably work on right
What are you
away.
going to do
or-
if one of the departments says, you know, Greg, I'd really like my particular project to be elevated? Can you move that up the priority list, please?
I don't know if I'd be in that position to do that at that particular time. I think that everybody, I think coming into the job, being the town facilities manager, enables
How are you
to
going to
not-
tell the person that news, though, if you don't think you can do that for them right there? What's your style? How are you communicating that information to them?
First, I'll just get back. I have to evaluate it first and figure out what's going on, and then I would get back to them. But when you get back to them, it's either not at the appropriate time or it's under evaluation. We'll be looking at it, depending on what it is, and not knowing what that particular emergency, if it's an emergency situation
Yeah, I was
versus.
going to ask you that.
Yeah, if it's emergency versus, I guess a nice to have versus want to have, need to have. I think the need to haves are probably the most important things.
Is your assessment going to have those kind of
Yes.
delineations?
Yes.
Okay.
You try to do through the whole thing and again, I think I mentioned before about like low fruit. A lot of the low fruits hanging there to be taken care of, which could solve some of the intermediate problems and then work on to the bigger problems. But again, not having it done before, I think that the Board of Selectmen and the townspeople have been relying on individual building owners or share takers in their own buildings. And again, their needs are very important to everybody.
Have you done these types of assessments before on forms and deliver this information to other boards and so forth?
Yes, I have, yep.
Okay, can you give me a quick example of that?
As far as,
A building that you assessed, what did the form look like? What did it include?
like, I wouldn't say basic one, but in depth, we had a parking garage that needed to come down. I came up with a plan on how to stop the particular from falling down, blocking it off, put it in more the scope of the work, who was going to do it, what were the tools that were going to be involved in doing it.
Was there any conflict involved with that project?
Not at all, because with an emergency project, we had to get that going right away because it ended up getting torn down within 6 months of trying to secure it and get it somewhat safe from debris falling.
By the way, it's a beautiful new park now.
Over in Maynard?
Yes.
It is, thank you, yep.
Yeah.
And the electrical charging station, I thought was quite a bonus that we added onto a building that had no use to it over there in the corner. So it was rather nice.
Could I, in the interest of time, can we go back to your management style? Once the assessment's done and you deliver this product to whom? Who are you giving the product to?
The paperwork, all the paperwork, to the Board of Selectmen, the shareholders and the stakeholders.
How are you going to deal with the prioritization of the projects?
Again, that just depends on what the particular thing is. Like I say, a lot of this stuff may come up, and it is an emergency situation.
Are
Like,
you going to add your flavor to the recommendations? Are you going to suggest that HVAC system is worth replacing more than else?
I would recommend versus putting, like, I'd rather see put good money towards good projects when the time is
It's
right.
all good money. They're all going to tell
Yeah.
you it's great money.
Oh, no, I understand that.
We need
I
it badly,
understand that.
by the way.
I understand. But again, at the end of the day, I think it's a collective agreement from all parties involved to understand that we all share the same stakes.
Mm-hmm.
There's just pieces of the stakes that need to be done sooner than others.
People in Assabet that I think you talked about regarding the new high school, you worked with quite a few people in that project.
Yes, I did.
How would they characterize your management style?
I'm a doer.
What would they say your weakness is?
I'm not sure. Not sure. I strive on getting the job done.
One last topic, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Project management. It's a big part of this position. Creating documentation, moving it through the chain for consideration, ultimate approval. Can you please tell us what project you have created a project plan for that includes, number one, a scope of work, number two, a description of the problem, number three, the timeline solution, and number four, a budget?
Both of them, I would say both of them were in Maynard. One was the demolition of the old gymnasium that was attached to the art space. Took that from soup to nuts to the central register, the advertising, the bid process, right to the selection process, and then the same thing with the parking garage. Same thing on that. That's from start to finish.
So that was a contract project?
Yes.
Okay, I'm talking about a project to build something, or not a contract package. Your resume indicates you have ample experience putting contracts together. I'm talking about the project to renovate a building or put something out there before you get to contract, right? This is convincing people to buy into what you're trying to do.
No, because I think I was directed by like I say, in Maynard, it was the Board of Selectmen and the town manager that brought it to my attention that, let's work on these things. So that's where I developed the scope of work. Like, go for requests. We have like I say, a lot of times we have no idea what these costs are.
So in that case, you did a budget as well?
Yes.
Put it out to bid, but you did a budget?
Well, like I say, in my own thing, there's different websites you can go on and get pricing for different things, get a ballpark on them to see what's going on, or just put out an RFP. And just see what's out there to see if it's affordable. We may be so far off, it's not attainable to do it.
How many times did that project go out to bid?
Which project?
The gymnasium project you just referenced?
Once. Went out to bid once. The parking garage went out once.
That is all right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hine.
Yeah, so you mentioned last week when you were interviewed that you had some experience, a positive experience working with School Dude.
Yes.
And then I think the second software program that you mentioned was Upkeep.
Yes.
And that you were exploring, you had some experience with one and were exploring the other.
Yes.
Both of the programs introduce efficiency and accountability into the jobs of tracking that you'd be doing as a facilities manager. You also mentioned that there's a daily time commitment to keeping up with the software program like School Dude. And you mentioned last week that it was about 15 minutes a day. To keep the software updated and running smoothly and so on. That 15 minutes a day automates many tasks that you would otherwise be doing with paper and represents a huge time saving in your day. You alluded to that last week.
Yes.
So my question is what do you get back with the time that these software programs are saving you? So what initiatives, relationships, programs will you develop for the town of Holliston as a facilities manager using these time-saving software programs?
Well, I think it gets right onto your PMs, your individual PMs, which are preventative maintenance on your HVAC systems, any elevators, things that you need regular maintenance on. You get procedures on how to do all this, what happens. And coming from a manufacturing background, procedures have always been just key to me. Everybody does it the same way. So if you have a procedure, you come up with a procedure, it becomes agreed upon. It's the way that we do business. It becomes part of the end result would be how the department runs.
Right.
So if anybody wants to know, how we do elevators, well, here's what we do with elevators. They're once a year. This is how you go it. Stages through. Do it with everything that we do with the town. This just takes the paperwork part of it out and gives you that quick access on your computer.
Right.
You don't have to go through files like we used to do with, save all the copies. It's right there for you. And like I said, then you enhance on those, because within those directories, you can enhance anything you want within that. So there's no longer these side paperwork. You can actually put the procedures probably right into those, along with having a paper copy that you need to, to pass around. But it's right there. What you need to do, how to take the filter out, how to,
Is
what
that a
tools to use.
one-time event, creating these procedures?
Create them once, and, well, I don't say one time, because you probably enhance them a lot of times. When you go in, you might find something else that needs to be done. You might find a grease fitting. So you're constantly trying to update them and keep them as up-to-date as possible. And again, you try to go through your first time and get everything, you'll miss things. You might miss a grease fitting. You might miss a bolt that you need to tighten down or something. And those little details that the procedure would have, you put those right into that, so that when you go there to do it again next year, you remember, oh, we got to grease that little fitting there.
I have one other question. You described your role in a $65 million renovation of Assabet Valley. What were some of the biggest challenges that you experienced with that project? What were some of the challenges in that renovation of Assabet?
I think getting everybody together was the biggest problem. There seemed to be a lot of animosity when we started there. I think a lot of them had taken advantage of the situation. There was a general contractor stuff, but I found when I first started going to the actual meetings as an employee of the school, nobody was on the same page. Somehow, through a few conversations and a few kind of stern meetings, we brought it together where everybody trusted everybody. I think there was a little bit more respect gained for each other.
Is that due to your leadership style?
I would hope so, yes. I would hope so, because they didn't have it before then, and it ended up moving on successful. And from that point on, I think everybody had the understanding that this is my side of the bargain. I'm the customer. You wanted this. We gave it to you. Now, in return, here's what we need in return. And I hold them to it. That's the deal we made. We shook hands, and we walked away from the deal saying, so there's no reason why the school should take the bad side of it, because you're not meeting your side of the obligation.
Can you describe an aspect of the renovation that improved the learning environment for the students in that school?
It was tremendous. The learning environment, they state-of-the-art everything with this school. I mean, they had things that they'd never had before, and it was a vocational school. Enhanced all the shops, enhanced all the classrooms. The labs that came through from the MSBA requirements, to move forward, was tremendous. I mean, these are things that teachers didn't have, tools they didn't have before, that now they've got here to utilize it and move forward. I think it was great. And I think the visual effect at the end of it, we ended up spending some of the extra money on the renovation of the kitchen, because it looks so institutional. They turned it into a real lively place. They've got the TVs up now. And that was a decision that we made at the end of the job to, let's see if we can do this. Can we get it done? And they got it done for school opening.
Were you making that decision, or were you executing the decision once it was made?
Actually, if the decision was made, but part of that decision on how to move forward, and if we could move forward with that particular thing in the time frame we had, with the lack of people. At the end of that job, a lot of people weren't in the job anymore. And we're talking a major renovation of a very large kitchen for, 1,500 students. So, and it was successful. It looked good. Come out real nice. Very proud of it, so.
In year 3, we plan to add the fields, ball fields and playing fields, and approach the schools to see what their interests are. Do you have some experience with playing fields and park sort of settings?
Well, like I said, at Assabet, I was responsible for all the grass cutting. There was, I think, 44 acres of open space for soccer fields, baseball fields. We had a turf field at the end, but we had a regular football field that we marked and lined on a regular basis. We marked all the fields.
What about putting in a new field? Would you be able to?
Well, we oversaw the entire project. We had about I think $3.8 million stadium put in with the turf field.
And you did that.
The maintenance of the turf field afterwards, between the brushing and the de-staticking of the field and the plowing of the field if we need to.
Okay.
And the equipment procurement for that.
Where did the specs for that project come from?
The architect?
Where did the specs for the field improvements that you just mentioned come from? Who drafted
From
them?
the architect.
Thank you.
When you do the assessment and you found out with the school that they needed a new laboratory, were you involved with any solicitation of grants to help out with the project, or did you just help facilitate the project, or were you part of the planning of funding? So, if if there were some grant opportunities. Were you involved in that at all?
Not for this building project.
Because it was more
It
MSBA.
was MSBA fully funded, well, I should say not fully funded, but it was funded by MSBA.
Right.
So that part was all taken care of, and the design, they had already had the design there, so the design, they'd done the feasibility and all that before I'd gotten there. But on, small projects and things like that,
Yeah.
been part of that, to some degree. But
Yeah,
like I say,
on other projects.
yeah, like I say, well, I was part of the green communities over in Maynard. So that was a lot of grant money there,
Right.
going back and forth, and a lot of energy improvements
Yes.
that were done over there, that and included the charging station and LED lighting and things like that. So I spent a lot of time working with that in the green communities to get to achieve that goal. And then the follow-up date of the years after that.
I think that's good knowledge to have when you're working with other department heads
Yep.
and things. And just because some of the folks that are listening tonight might have not been listening last week when you were talking, can you tell us what your greatest asset is that you'd bring to the town of Holliston?
But my knowledge of the trades, the industry,
Okay,
and a lot of years of experience.
okay. And so when you say your knowledge of the trades and industry, can you talk a little more in depth?
Like I've been with the trades most of my life. Like I say, being a licensed carpenter, I've done carpentry work a lot of my life. I've been a truck driver. I've done construction work. I'm going to say a lot of things I've done pretty well. Am I an expert at any one of them? I've achieved a few of them. But I find that the more knowledge I have, the better of a rounded person I am.
Right.
And I know enough when I'm in trouble
Right.
that I need to get somebody to come in and help me.
That's a good thing.
So I think that's a good thing to have learned over the years that, and I can get there enough. I could probably, after all the HVAC units I've seen and condensers and compressors I've seen, I could probably change one. I know I could purge and recharge a system, but I don't know if I guaranteed after I was done. But
Right,
I could probably do it from just general knowledge of watching somebody being done.
Right, right.
Can you describe a situation in your most recent position at Asset Valley when that asset, that knowledge of the trades really helped you perform at your best?
Almost every day, but we had a major sewer backup. And at the time, we took on a project ourselves to bring some electricity and some water to a new greenhouse that we had granted, funding was granted to. And at the same time, we had a major sewer leak and had no idea where it was coming from. So because I have my license, I had the backhoe on property, we actually did an emergency dig and had the pumping truck up there, we had a vacuum truck up there, we had a camera up there, and we were digging, and we actually found a manhole that was put in 1974 that was 6 feet underground.
Oh, boy.
And it was full of roots.
Oh, my.
And at the end of the 3-day task, we had clean running sewer, and that pipe was fixed, and it's got a higher head on it, it's above the ground, and so I was kind of just flying one day and digging a trench to put some electricity in the greenhouse to
Wow.
digging up a sewer and solving a problem there, so.
John, any more questions?
I do. Mr. Lefter, if you could, I'm having difficulty making a connection on our earlier conversation. Can you tell me about your experience drafting strategic plans, please?
Strategic plans regarding just in
The
general.
analysis that, when you come up with an analysis.
It's just everything that's involved in what we're looking at. We got
Have
a
you read the
building.
job description?
Pardon me?
Have you read the job description?
Yes, I have.
Let me bring you to item number 10 under essential functions. Provides budget-related information to the Director of Public Works for use in the preparation of facility department salary, expenses, budgets, equipment, and supplies. Strategically plans and coordinates for capital and equipment replacement and maintenance schedules.
That's, like I said, that's doing evaluations on current equipment or lack of equipment and the needs that we need to move forward with. And like I say,
I know it. I'm just asking
Yep.
what your experience is in drafting these strategic plans.
I've like I said, I bought many pieces of equipment. I purchased front-end loaders.
Have you drafted a strategic plan?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, I
And
have.
what data did you fall back on to complete that strategic plan?
Like by doing visual evaluations, lack of things getting done, or the need for things being done that couldn't be achieved at what we were looking at, and just came up with a plan to take care of the situation of the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Any other questions? I'm all set too. So thank you very much
No, thank you again for
for
the
coming
opportunity.
in.
No, thank
And
you.
we have one more that we're interviewing, 2 finalists. So congratulations with it being a two
Thank you
of the
very much.
finalists.
I very
And
appreciate
Mr.
the
Ritter will
opportunity.
be in touch.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very
Coming
much.
in.
Thank you, Mr. Lefter.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next up on the agenda is Maderi. And, well, we already did Karen's budget, so we're all set there. Unless you want to come up and talk about something else. We're all set.
some input on Maduri.
Oh, okay. So we would like to call up folks from Maderi to come up and have a seat. And we'll have a conversation about medical sales, medicinal sales, and a proposed language for a host community agreement. And we have town council here, Kate Fedorov, and she may have some questions for you as well.
That's fine.
So if you would introduce yourself to the folks back home and tell us a little bit, just to give them a refresher about your company.
Sure. So I'm Christopher Ray. I'm the attorney for Maderi Incorporated, CEO Chris Fantano in the audience as well. I am a licensing and compliance attorney in the cannabis industry. Maderi is in this discussion in pursuit of permission to operate a medical retail facility over on Boynton Street here in Holliston. We've submitted a proposed language for our HCA through the town manager. Town council has seen it as well. And I think that's all that we're here to discuss this evening and to answer your questions.
Okay, great. Kate, you want to fill us in on some of the things you've been working on?
Sure. Will this microphone pick me up, or should
If you could just turn.
want me to come closer?
Or turn it a little to you.
Oh yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah. So, unlike the landscape that we've been dealing with recently, medical marijuana has been around for quite a long time, or longer, I guess I should say, than recreational marijuana. So this is a little bit of a different animal than we're used to because, as you know, Holliston has a long history with recreational marijuana, with various votes and defining what is allowable and permissible in the town. Medical is an entirely different animal. And the way that works is under your zoning bylaws in the town of Holliston, medical is an allowable use in the industrial zone. And that includes both cultivation, product manufacture, as well as dispensing of medical marijuana. And the next step that the board is considering tonight is the host community agreement. And that's an interesting twist on the law, in that 94G, which governs recreational marijuana, has this one little caveat where it sticks medical marijuana in it, and it requires any medical facility to receive an approved HCA from the locality in which they're citing. So that process is the same. It's a discretionary administrative function of the Board of Selectmen, and you decide whether or not you want to partner with an entity and negotiate an agreement with them.
Okay. And what is typical for a host agreement for this kind of establishment? Is there a certain percentage of gross sales of the host community?
So that's also still governed by 94G, and you're limited to the 3% community impact fee cap.
Okay. And what other kinds of conditions can we have in the community host agreement? Because a few people had said that they were worried about traffic and congestion and that sort of thing. And so when a host community agreement's drawn up, can we have some of those guidelines in there?
Sure. So like any host community agreement, what the idea of a host community agreement, generally speaking, is to negotiate terms so as to mitigate the impacts on the town. So you can include things to address traffic concerns, or to address noise, or to address I've seen limitations on the number of patients who are allowed to come in at any given time, or appointment only, or limit the number of hours that the entity can operate. So all of those things are fair game to ensure that the operation is tailored to the community needs, and more importantly, to prevent negative impacts if you choose to negotiate.
And, you know, we all know that it was voted at town meeting not to have recreational dispensary of marijuana sales in the town of Holliston. But we have several growers, and this seems to me to be part of their business, that they're servicing their customers that have medical conditions, and they get some benefit too. And you know, one of the concerns we have in Holliston is that we only have about 14% of our revenue is commercial. So you know, this may be a nice way to work on that, to elevate that a little bit. But there were a lot of concerns, and I would think that if the board wanted to have a host community agreement, that we would need to have some sort of guidance on writing up a host community agreement with some terms or limitations. Because we did have a few residents that came the first time that had some concerns. So
Sure.
As much as we like to have more commercial income, we also want to make sure we have happy residents.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is I'm familiar with the cultivation agreement that exists for this and other entities. And that is an entirely separate agreement than what's before you tonight. So cultivation is a passive use. It has different impacts. So for example, odor is a really big impact or one that's of major concern, because the risk for odor in a cultivation facility is high, whereas that risk is not as prevalent in a retail, or let's say on the medical side, we'll call it a dispensing facility. Right. So yeah, if the board were inclined to enter into an agreement, different impacts would have to be addressed. So, and what are those impacts? It's namely the pedestrian traffic, because in those passive use industries, there is not pedestrian traffic apart from the folks who work in the facility and do the cultivation and do the manufacturing, 10 or 12 employees. So it's a different animal.
Thank you. John, do you have some questions?
I do. I have some questions for Mr. Ray.
Go ahead.
Can you remind me when Maderi first came to us and got its approved host community agreement?
You're referring to the previous HCA that's
I
in
am.
existence?
I am.
That was last year around this time. Is that right, Chris?
I believe it was April, I want to say.
Yeah.
It was 57 days start to finish. We were through the entire process.
What other communities does Maderi operate medicinal dispensing facilities?
This would be the only one.
When you folks came to us about a year ago and you advanced, the interest in Holliston becoming a good match for your business, at any time did you reveal to us that you had an interest in opening up a medicinal dispensing facility?
At that time, we didn't have an interest in opening.
Can I ask you why?
What's that?
Can I ask you why?
Why?
Why it was not envisioned then, but it is envisioned now? What changed?
Well, we were in the process of another town we were in negotiations with. This is near and dear to my heart. I'm actually just submitted an offer on 12.5 acres in Holliston.
Mhm.
So this has been the best possible fit of any town. The community's been amazing to us, and this is where our roots are. We do things from a cultivation standpoint that no other cultivation group on planet Earth can do. So when it comes to providing health care for other patients and other people, we can provide large-scale organic medical cultivation using 0 pesticides, 0 parts per million, and there isn't another group that can say that. So if this is going to be our hometown, then I believe you have to stand by your product and help the people of your own community, and that's what I intend to do.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name, sir.
Christopher Pantano.
Christopher, could you tell me what what nexus the 12 and a half acres comment had there. I didn't pick that up. What do you plan to do with that acreage?
Build my house.
Oh, for residential purposes?
Yes, sir.
It's not connected to the business?
Not at all.
Okay.
We love this community, and
You
this is
do
home.
kind of fall in love with it, don't you?
It's been amazing. All the people here have been amazing. There's a sense of community.
It's really special.
It is very special, and we intend to uphold that on our end as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, yeah, so the HCA that was signed back in April 8th of 2019, it's clearly explicit, underlined in fact, that it's only for cultivation purposes. And so I'm similar question to John, why no attempt was made, what's changed, and you're mentioning that you've now moved to, you're looking to build in Holliston and you want to make Holliston your home and grow your business here. But given that the explicit terms of the April HCA were that it's only for cultivation, it doesn't seem like Madeira was forthright or candid in its intentions with the town. And so I have some concerns about that in terms of forming a partnership with Madeira. I also have some concerns about the letter that was written on December 4th to the board that says that it implies that the previous resident votes against the sale of recreational marijuana in Holliston could be reversed. So that's an implication in the letter. I believe that a partnership with a company at a minimum that challenges the intention of the voters for its own benefit raises a question of a partnership with a town that's mutually beneficial, especially when Madeira has limited experience, or as you state, no experience as a medical dispensary in the region.
I was actually a caregiver in Maine, so that's not true. I have plenty of experience in this industry. I own patents on bioreactors, which I can actually large-scale mine organic phosphorus, which will save the world's food crisis problem that we're going to have in 22 years. So we do things in a way, we think outside the box. Now, it's also come to my attention that you guys do not also have another medical treatment facility here in Holliston. And when that was brought to my attention, there are people here in Holliston that do need alternative medication. And when that was brought to my attention, we didn't know that at the time, we thought it was a perfect fit, because if people want alternative medication for different ailments, then they should be able to get at least the best possible medication that's out there, and that's something that I can do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with the 55,000 patients in Massachusetts who are registered to purchase marijuana from a medical dispensary, but there are medical dispensaries in the area. So I don't believe that Holliston would be underserving those in need.
Not in Holliston, though.
Mm-hmm. I guess my concern with partnering with Madeira outweighs the concern, the general concern about having patients have access to medical marijuana where there are dispensaries in the area. So the greater concern in my mind is the partnership we would be forming with Madeira, rather than the ability for one of the registered patients to have access to medical marijuana. The greater concern is the partnership.
But the Attorney General's already ruled that a ban is not able to be created on a medical treatment facility in Massachusetts. No town has the ability to do that.
Zoning bylaws.
Yeah, so let me talk to that. Let me speak to that for a minute. What Mr. I'm so sorry. Pantano, Chris, is speaking about is way back when, following the legislation which permitted medical marijuana, there were several communities that enacted through their town meeting zoning bylaws which prohibited one type or entirely prohibited all medical marijuana uses. And the AG, which you know as anytime you have a town meeting vote on a bylaw, gets sent to the AG for approval. The AG found that the bylaws were impermissible because it was essentially preempted by state law. And what she said was that it would thwart the purpose, essentially, of the enactment of the Humanitarian Act for medical marijuana if a community were allowed to ban it. Because who's to say it would just be banned in one community, but rather 351 communities could ban it throughout the state. But that's separate and apart. That's a bylaw. Goes through AG review and approval, and it has a different analysis than an HCA, which is a discretionary administrative function, which the court has recently sustained as being a discretionary function. And so what the review for that review process would be, if it, for example, if the board were inclined to not enter into an HCA, is you're governed by the arbitrary and capricious standard, which you have to have a rational basis for doing what you do. You can't do something based on discriminatory intent or some illegal basis, or you're ignoring the facts on the ground. So you need a rational reason for not entering into an HCA. And that's where you are in the legal landscape.
I have a couple questions for our town planner. If she could come up and sit here so we can talk to you.
Karen.
I'm going to turn around.
I'll hold your hand, Karen.
Karen is involved with the growth of town. She's involved with the planning. She helps out with grant writing and trying to make our town more accessible for all abilities and all the rest. So she's involved with a lot. And also she's been around town for quite a while. And so I'd like to get your take on this. What your opinions? Be candid with the folks back home. They need to know your thoughts.
Wow. I don't generally get an opinion.
You do tonight. As our town planner, this is part of our town, right?
Well, I would tell you that retail, if you want to equate it to retail, is allowed by special permit in the industrial zoning district. So with that said, two of the key things that Kate has already pointed out as being sort of discretionary in whatever agreement or whatever negotiations you would talk about are par for the course in a special permit. So time, right, time and traffic essentially. So regulating either a facility's hours of operation or any sort of mitigation for traffic or controlling customer flow.
Yeah.
Within Hopping Brook itself, so just around the corner, there is a special permit for retail. It's within Essex Shires, so if you need a custom-built trombone or trumpet, you want to go try it out or take a master class with Doc Severinsen, you can go there. They have a special permit for retail. It is by appointment only. I don't know if you know, that facility is right on the curve in Hopping Brook Road.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Would you see any issue with this, other than traffic?
I don't see traffic as an issue, especially when the planning board is sort of contemplating a distribution facility just down the street where you know, any passenger car traffic would be dwarfed by the truck traffic for other facilities, much bigger facilities in the park. Is that what you mean, or you just mean regulating?
Basically, you know, I want to know if this is a good fit for our industrial area, in your opinion, and you know, and what you think the good points are and the bad points are for the residents back home.
Well, Karen, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, jump in. Is there the 44 Boynton Road, is it unique in where it sits within the industrial park in terms of being within proximity of something, of areas that are residentially zoned, perhaps not in Holliston, but you know, in neighboring Medway? When you look at a map, it looks like Boynton Road is an abutter to quite a large residential area in Medway. So I know it's within an industrially zoned park, but it's kind of got a unique location within that park, whereas Shire, as you mentioned, is right on the main road and it's sort of embedded deep in the industrial park. 44 Boynton Road really sits out on the periphery, and right behind it, within, it looks like about a quarter mile, are 20-plus homes, residential homes in Medway. Is it unique in the industrial park in its location in that way? Are there other sites that abut?
It actually directly abuts the water tower, the National Grid transmission line. So it's pretty utility heavy there. In terms of what's in back of it. There's a new facility planned behind it, so it's not the end lot on Boynton. It's one removed from the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you can add, Karen, that from a planning point of view? Anything at all?
One question I have for Karen, actually. I probably should know this better. But when I looked at the zoning bylaw table of uses, it said the medical treatment centers were a yes, a Y, so approved as of,
By right.
allowable as of right,
Yeah.
as opposed to retail by a special permit.
Correct.
So that review process wouldn't happen at your level, so it would be prudent if the board were inclined to do something to include what would normally be in a special permit, if you were inclined to go with the HCA, to include those conditions.
In this-
Because
There won't be
so
a
so
special-
medical marijuana predated recreational, and we didn't have the same review process. We weren't the lawyers at the time here. So am I right on that, Karen? or-
Well, this particular facility does have a special permit and site plan review from the planning board, so
Oh, so it might trigger,
Or-
yeah, a reopener type thing. Okay, yes, okay, that's what she's
So
saying.
we
Got it.
wouldn't nearly need that.
I think it would be safer, if you were inclined to go in that direction, it would be safer to include conditions that you felt were important, and then how that
In the
would
host
work.
community agreement.
If there were, if the conditions were duplicative, they would just be duplicative, or the more conservative one would govern. If,
And this would be something that Karen could probably help us with.
yeah,
the list
certainly,
of
certainly,
conditions.
yeah.
Get her professionalism. Okay.
I
great.
forgot about
And you
the
had a
existing
question,
special
sir.
permit. You're
It was
right.
already.
She already, okay. All right. Any questions from the audience concerning this? No? Any more questions, Sharon?
No, not this time.
Okay. And do you have anything else, sir, you would like to offer?
No questions on my part. I know that one of the concerns that we've discussed this evening has to do with traffic. I know that there had been a conversation that we'd had some time ago about appointment-only usages of the facility or otherwise to control traffic, and, we're amenable to solutions of that kind if that's an ongoing concern of the towns.
That's good to hear.
It was stated by Meredith that it would be 3 months of appointment.
For the first 3 months, is that, yeah?
Well, we were, like I said. when
We had
first
discussed that
started,
option, right?
We want to work with the town here. I understand this is a new process and everyone's trying to get comfortable with it.
Right.
So we don't want to be adversarial in any way. The suggestion that we made, and we're open to suggestions back here because it's a partnership, is appointment only for the first 3 months. We can come back in front of the board and see, let's look at the traffic. If there was any adverse, we could, maybe reduce some of the hours. Like I said, we're here to work with everyone.
Do you have any idea on the income that will be raised from this new part of the business? So we could get a sense on if we had a host community agreement of 3%, what the town would be getting each year?
We can tell you what we would hope to see, and, it depends really, but you're seeing a trend right now a little bit back towards medical because of the shortages, and you have to keep 30%, you can't wholesale that. So it ends up being a portion where you cannot, you'd be losing revenue at the town from the wholesale portion of it by us not being able to wholesale that part of the medical. But we're hoping somewhere in the $3 to $6 million range.
And so we.
But wait a second, can I ask a question on that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman? So repeat that for me again, because the host, if you're cultivating at your facility, you would be transferring, so not a sale of the marijuana to your
It would
medical facility.
It would be.
Is it the same exact partners?
It's Madeira Holliston, so you'd be getting 3% on the sale to the storefront, and then an additional 3% on the retail. So you get
So you have
6%.
two legally separate entities
Correct.
for each, so either way it would be a sale.
Correct,
That's the
right.
way I
And
understand
each of their own HCA's would govern the payments from those. So nothing in this agreement would abrogate the payments already owed from the cultivation side of the business.
So approximately, what would that be for the town if you didn't meet your goal, and say you did 2 million? What, does anybody have a calculator? What would that,
3% of 2 million would be 60,000.
so be 60,000 annually?
And that's on the one half.
Right.
Right.
plus the other half.
Right, and I use the 2 million because I think it's conservative, where you said 3 to 6, I'm saying 2.
No, and this is to go back to a previous conversation with the interview that you had. I think you guys are doing the fields. Like, I'd be more than happy to work with you guys to provide all the struvite, which is water-soluble phosphorus, make sure those fields are in absolute pristine shape.
Great, well, that would be much appreciated. We've
I like
just started
running,
working on those fields.
Yeah.
And Mr. Canny, he's watching out for us over there. He's quite a guy.
Can I just ask 2 quick questions? So there are 2 applications, Mederi, so there are 2 companies. We've got Mederi Incorporated and then Mederi Holliston. Mederi Incorporated has 2 applications with the state. Both are for cultivation.
Correct.
That's right, yep.
And it would be Mederi Holliston that would be applying to...
Under the retail.
Okay.
There's also a
Right.
third one for manufacturing. It's all really the same stuff. You just have to apply for the multiple licenses. That's just,
Okay.
each part of it's very well regulated and fits into its own little tiny category.
And Mederi has no, what, is there a status update on whether or not there's a provisional license from either of those 2 Mederi Incorporated applications? Has
We got
it?
some pretty exciting stuff. We're waiting to get the final word, but we should have some information in the next about 15 to 20 days.
So at this point in time, there are no provisional licenses, just the 2 applications that are
Yep,
pending
it's,
before the state?
we had an RFI because they didn't understand something from an email, and it's already been cleared up, so we should be seeing about 15 to 20 days, which then starts the timer. So we're pretty diligent, moving as quick as we can.
We have a motion, sir.
I am not inclined to support the request at this time, Mr. Chairman. I'm taken by Mederi's lack of experience in our community running this kind of business. I understand from Ms. Federoff's position what the legal boundaries are. Mr. Pantano has been compelling in his pitch for the medicinal sales issue. However, I'd like to take him up on his willingness to work with the town over the next several months and years, if you will, before we take this kind of a step, which would be a change in the way we had originally envisioned this host community agreement to operate. So count me in as a wait and see, but not right now. That's my thinking.
Interesting. Mrs. Hine?
I think that a long-term commitment from a small regional company in marijuana cultivation is a type of business, rather, is a type of partnership that would benefit Holliston. I just don't think we have that yet. I think that we need to see that commitment from Mederi, from any cultivator, from any company looking to open a dispensary, and the lack of sufficient experience in dealing with patient distribution is concerning to me as well. Given that this really is the forefront of a new business in Holliston, I think that we need to have that confidence before we sign a partnership. So I share John's comments.
I look at it differently. I'm a little disappointed because, you know, when you start telling a company how they're going to run their business and, you know, their lack of expertise, and you don't even know their scope of employees, what their capabilities are, you know, I don't think that's what we're here for. Holliston has a reputation, and it hasn't always been business friendly, and I would hate to think that we would lose an opportunity like this that we have before us, where, you know, the community would certainly garner quite a bit in income from this. And if there was an issue, we can always address it. But we can have a community host agreement, and we can have conditions and control things that way. And you know, they've been here a year and they're doing well. And there's any other new business that was in town, if they wanted to add on to their business in some fashion, I would hope that we would support that. And especially where we don't have much more than 14% revenue from the commercial side. So I'm disappointed not to see the support to try this. And I realize I can make a motion myself, but if the two of you aren't willing to try this, that would be futile. So, but I am disappointed.
Well, you know, Mark, I hear you, and I don't disagree a lot with what you're saying. My vote is not right now. It's not a no, nay, never thinking. I believe in giving the business a chance to show us that they're good partners, as the owner seems to indicate. So, and they have not been in operation for a year. They filed for this expansion of a business plan merely 8 months after they opened. So,
Yeah.
I'd like to see the business thrive in Holliston as promised, and become a good neighbor and a good partner, and revisit this down the road. That's my thinking. So.
We would request all this to be put in writing as to why we're being denied.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, the vote is, the board has their minutes and they make a vote, and that's all available. You know,
We would just request it to be in writing, that's all.
yes.
I would only further offer that, we've received letters of recommendation from groups like the Mass Patients Alliance because of Mr. Pantano's lengthy experience in the industry. And if the concern is about a lack of experience, or you want to do sort of a wait and see, I would ask, what does that mean? What can we do to demonstrate our competency to you, sir?
Time.
Time of operation of the existing.
Yeah, you could tell by my questions, Mr. Ray, that I was taken aback by Maderi's quick pivot from
Sure.
cultivation to medicinal, and as Ms. Hine pointed out, the HCA specifically excluded any other form of business. So within 6 to 8 months, you see this develop. It's just something I'd like to see them master their business within Holliston before they become, and perhaps become, a medicinal sales outlet. So time.
Can I ask you a quick question?
You may, of course, yeah, go.
So I just want to understand, because now I'm buying property in Holliston,
Mm-hmm.
that, and Mr. Ritter asked me to sit on the agriculture board because my expertise is second to none, that it's okay for a resident to work for the town but not operate a business in the town. Is that correct?
I don't understand your proposition, sir.
You asked me to sit on the agricultural board or to apply.
What does this have to do with the
I'm just trying to get an
application?
idea of exactly what we're talking about here, because I need to demonstrate more time and experience, correct?
Running a business in Holliston, that's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
Can
do we
I
need
ask a
to?
question?
Oh, please.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, is the cultivation business even operating yet? I haven't done any inspections on the building permit that was issued yet, so I'm just kind of curious.
Waiting for the provision.
Okay. So at the moment, the cultivation is just your office, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure.
Do we need to take a vote to perhaps motion to decline the application, or does it just sit unacted upon?
That's really up to you in terms of procedure. I mean, obviously, if you were doing the converse, you would need a motion to approve, but, you can
Well, the
also.
applicant can withdraw it as well.
The applicant could withdraw it.
Okay.
You could table it, you could move to not enter into negotiations, you could table it to a date certain.
I'm not surprised the applicant is asking for this because it enhances his business. I just don't see the issue here, but I'm willing to have a motion for whatever you want to do.
Is Maderi willing to withdraw their application at this time for future consideration, or do you want the board to act upon something this evening, Mr. Ray?
No, I mean, if we knew, with a greater certainty when we could expect to be reconsidered, and with greater detail what sort of materials would help to move the needle on this a little bit. I mean, for example, if hiring more experienced managers or operators, that kind of thing, whatever you had in mind to demonstrate the competency of the business to run the retail facility, and adequate time to address those concerns, so that if we withdraw the application, that we knew we could be certain that we could return relatively quickly to show that we're willing to meet the challenge that the town has set before us.
So I have a question on that, and this is a CCC question. You're in line or close to being reached at the provisional stage. Do you know, from provisional issuance through to final licensure, that's when you can commence operation, right? You have
90 days.
full bill. You're
90
looking
days.
at 90 days. Okay, from provisional to final.
Correct.
And you're fully built out at this point?
What's that?
Are you fully built out at this point?
No, once we get the provisional, we can start build out, inspections, and then. 90
You're gonna
days.
build the cultivation facility in 90 days?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Good work.
No one works.
Oh,
on it.
you're retrofitting, okay.
Okay. So, would it be fair to say sometime in April, maybe, to come back and see us?
April, May.
I think that's too soon. I'd like to see the business operate a little bit further into its business operations. It does not sound like it's operating right now to generate revenue and to make good on its business plan effectively. So I'd like to see a little bit more time.
6 months?
Something like that, 6 to 12 months, I think would be a reasonable time frame.
All right. Does that sound reasonable to you, sir?
We think that we could do it sooner than 6 months.
Well, why don't you see what you can get for materials and what some of the concerns that the board has, and we'll go from there.
Sure.
You mentioned you had quite a few things that you could get for us, so that would be helpful
Sure.
on what type of positions these would be and what type of education these people would have of these positions and that sort of thing might be helpful to sway the board. So any helpful information that you can think of.
I do have one more question. I was thinking it was Madeira Incorporated. Do I have that right?
Mhm.
Okay. And not Madeira, I'm sorry, what was the second company's name?
Madeira Holliston.
Madeira Holliston. So thinking that it was Madeira Incorporated, I was wondering about the, Kate, correct me on the right language to use here, but a disclosure of those who have interest in the company. You had mentioned something, I believe, at one point that it's required that any company seeking a cultivation license disclose rather any interest from any outside entity in the business itself.
Yeah, sure. On the CCC side, anyone, whether they be a passive investor versus an active manager, all of those personnel are disclosed.
Okay. Do we have that information on Madeira Holliston or Madeira
I don't know what you've
Incorporated?
submitted, Chris.
I don't think that we've sent that directly over, but that's all those materials to the Cannabis Control Commission are open for inspection.
We can send over anything.
They're
you need.
difficult
Yeah.
to find. I have to say, I find the CCC's website a little bit difficult to find a particular application.
Sure. If you
It's
like our
not
application
so-
materials, that's not an issue for us. Those are public
so
records
user-
anyway.
Yeah, it's not user-friendly in
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah, a lot of these websites are tough.
I mean, I think that would
Yeah.
be one criteria to satisfy.
Do you want to know who the investors are? Is that, I just want to make sure I get everything over that you want. Is that what the question is?
That was my question,
Yeah, no
yes,
problem.
was if we could get the public disclosure of
course.
other entities that have
Mhm.
an interest in Madeira Holliston, and I think also Madeira Incorporated.
Not a problem. We have
Thank
two
you.
investors. I own 78% of the company. I'm the only cultivator ever in the history of cannabis that owns the full board rights. And the reason for that is to prevent what happened in Holliston with MedMen and with PharmaCann, which is they undercut you, force you to sell your license, and then the towns get bullied by the bigger corporations. So I'm actually the opposite of that.
That's good to hear.
You know, it's been a long ride.
Yeah. All right. So that's where we're at. Everybody comfortable with that? Get back to us with more information so that we can consider.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kate.
guys.
Thanks, Kate. Good night.
I appreciate you having me as always.
Absolutely. Thank
Have a good
you.
night. Nice to meet you.
You also.
Okay, next up is our second interview for the facility manager position, Mr. Peasy.
I think Jeff is getting him.
Great.
getting him in. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Peasy.
How are you tonight?
How are you
Nice to
today?
see you again.
If you don't mind sitting here with the mic.
I do not.
And so you are in the top two for the position. And we met with another gentleman earlier tonight. And if you don't mind sharing with the public, because some of them who are watching tonight might not have been watching last week, if you could tell us a little bit about your experience, a little bit about your schooling, and why you would like this job in Holliston.
Sure. I'm from Franklin. I grew up in Franklin, Mass., so I do know Holliston fairly well. I have taken a tour and seen some of the facilities. After high school, I went to Arizona State University for architecture and environmental design. I only stayed there 2 years and transferred back to Wentworth in Boston and got my bachelor's degree in facilities management. I also went back recently and got my master's in facilities management.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
I have other certificates in leadership and from Bryant University. I started, after my bachelor's degree, I went to work at Norfolk County as the maintenance supervisor and worked my way up to the facilities department head. And I worked there for 12 years, ran a crew of about 50 personnel in-house and all the procured services. I restructured a lot of things there because a lot of things were of old method. Brought in new technologies and restructured how they do their RFP process, request for proposals, and their procurement strategies.
Oh, good.
After I worked at Norfolk County, I moved to a new position in Boston for a Trinity Management Company, a large property management company, does residential housing for the most part, and was their capital projects manager. So I got to work there for 7 years using my project management skills, and I did all the capital projects ranging from a few $1,000s up to millions of dollars. Not only that, I did all the capital programming year to year to year, up to 20 years out for them. So that was a great experience. I loved that job. After I worked there, I kind of got sick of driving to Boston. Hour and a half in, hour and a half out with traffic. So I saw an opportunity in my hometown where I live now in Plainville to help execute the build-out of the new Plain Ridge Park Casino and become the department head there for facilities. So I organized and structured a whole new facilities department from scratch and brought it into operations and made sure the buildings were functional 24/7 and no downtime. And did all the financials, the budgets, capital improvements, laid all that budget out. So I worked there for a couple of years and had the opportunity at Ocean State Job Lot to become the director of property management, the department head there. And that's where I'm at now. Ocean State Job Lot, it's called Ocean State Jobbers, Inc., is about 150 stores. There's several divisions to it, so I might, if you don't mind me explaining it, is that okay?
Go for it.
There's about 150 stores. We own about half the stores. The ones that we own the whole plaza, so we have about right around 400 tenants. You know, Tractor Supplies, the Dollar Trees, the Dollar Generals, restaurants, and such. And I do all the leasing and lease management for those tenants as well. As well as our leased stores, the ones we lease from other owners. So the other side of the leasing, not as a tenant, as an owner. We have a corporate facilities department that I manage, about 50 people, biggest corporate campus in the state of Rhode Island, biggest distribution center, I should say, which the offices are attached to, and there's 2 separate buildings, satellite buildings on that campus. We also have about 30 investment properties ranging from restaurants to warehousing to housing, car dealerships. So we manage all those properties as well. And that's where I'm at now. I live in Plainville. Looking forward to this opportunity. It's right up my wheelhouse. I love restructuring, reorganizing, assessing, leadership, something I'd really enjoy.
Great. I'm going to have John ask questions first because he wasn't here for the first round.
Sure.
Thanks. Good evening, Christopher. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
What concerns you most about this position?
That I don't know enough about the facilities yet.
What have you done to learn about them to date?
Just online, and I drove around a couple times, looked at this. I didn't want to go in and bother anybody or ask questions, but I've seen the town hall, I've seen the schools. So, the fire station, the police station, just drive-bys.
Within these concerns about the unknown in the facilities, what's the core issue?
I'm sorry, sir?
What's the core issue of concern? The condition, the cost, the prioritization of events, the deferred maintenance?
Well, it'd be the strategy.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so to me, we got to develop a strategy on how we maintain our facilities here in Holliston.
Have you done that in prior positions?
Yes, sir.
You help facilitate a strategy.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the tools you use to help our people in this town get to that point?
Well, to me, it's all an exercise in leadership. And I would say there's all different styles of leadership, and depending on the initiative, that leadership style might have to change. But to me, this one's collaborative, and you need to get everybody involved. It's going to take a village to understand what we have, what our assets are, how to take care of them financially and operationally. And to do that, we all need to collaborate. Not only the people that use the buildings, we as a group here, Mr. Ritter, myself, the students, everybody that uses the buildings.
When you're doing this collaboration, Christopher, can you describe your typical workday? How do you collaborate? What's your work style?
I like
What time do you
one-on-one.
come to work in the morning?
I usually get to work at 7.
Okay, keep going. Keep going. Tell me what a typical workday is. As you begin
For
to-
me?
Yes, as you begin to collaborate on this job.
For me on this job, I would, first of all, the first thing I would call it GASPy. And I put the letters together, a little acronym for myself. First thing I'd want to do is gather as much historical data financially and operationally as I can, the G, GASPy. Then the assessment of the facilities come in, or the properties or land or whatever it is that we're managing. We need to assess what the conditions are, the current condition, and it's called the current conditions assessment. And you need to put that together. You got to go through all the systems. You got to go through all the.
What tool do you use to do the assessment, Christopher?
Well, again, this is going to take a village. So, first from historical knowledge of what I've done in the past and how I do it, but you need trusted vendors and technical experts. You're going to need the people that use the buildings and their experiences to understand what the problems are and what issues the facilities may have. You got to use everything to understand them and go through them. And to me, it's a combination of those things. Some people will just say, get somebody in here and do an audit. To me, that's not the way to do it. I think the best way to do it is collaborative, using all the tools you can to get as much information as you can to assess. And then the S would be, after you gather all this information, it probably take a little while to do, but then to strategize and come up with options. What are the best options to move forward? And that's when I'd probably sit with, Mr. Ritter or something and go over the best options to present to the town for decisions on how to execute a plan. And then a written plan would probably need to go into place on how to do that and what the timelines are, the scopes of work, and the financial obligations. You probably have to determine what the funding would be, to get that part of that plan in place.
Christopher, what's your career plan?
My career plan is
Yes,
to,
sir.
right now, I've done a lot, and I've done everything I really want to do, except find a real home. And this
You
is
don't
what
feel
I'm
at home in your current job?
not
Why?
not totally.
Why? What's missing?
The sense of community, sense of belonging. I have a great staff. I've hired them all myself, and they very trustworthy, and they're very smart. And I think I've done my job there. But still, it's missing is that sense of community to me.
How will you know when you make this change to Holliston, if we hire you, that it was the right move for you?
I don't think anybody will. You never know until you do something, and I'm not afraid of change or moving forward and making decisions.
Do you regret leaving the public sector in 2007?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit.
What was it about your experience at Norfolk that you found validating?
The interaction with all sorts of different people in the buildings I managed were owned by the state, so they were like courthouses and
Correctional facilities and so forth.
yeah. In dealing with those people directly, like the judges or the sheriffs or the county commissioners, and going through and making decisions collaboratively was valuable, and I like that.
You currently manage 100 people from my understanding in your resume.
Mhm.
You're prepared to come to a job where you're the only person in the unit.
Yes.
Have you thought about that?
Yes.
You realize you'll be on 24/7 call.
Yes.
How does that fit with you? You're going to be the chef and the chief bottle washer. How does that work for you?
I'm on 24/7 call right now.
Right. And you have actually people to call upon to deal with a leaky pipe or a frozen pipe or any number of issues. Now you're going to be that guy again.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be fixing pipes, but
But responding to the scene.
the responding to
assess.
the scene,
That's correct.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm prepared to do that. I do that all the time.
How do you deal with failure?
Not well.
Well, let me give you a scenario.
Sure.
You've put your heart and soul into that assessment report you just talked about. It's become a strategic plan. You presented it to this board. You've gotten some favorable response. Now you move on to the finance committee, and it's not supported. What do you do?
Well, I can only execute what the board tells me to execute. My job is to give you the information to make the decision.
Did you read the job description?
Yes, sir.
So you understand that you'll be taking your plan, once it's approved by us, to the finance committee?
Exactly, once it's approved by you.
Right. So I'm saying it's, now you've
Oh, I
brought it
see
to
what
the
you're saying.
finance committee,
Sorry.
and it dies there.
Yeah, but.
What do you do?
But you go back to the drawing board and find out why it was rejected.
How do you do that? Talk to me about your self-assessment. What are you doing in this space?
So I got to find out why they rejected it, right? If they rejected it for a specific reason, or if it was just because there was lack of funding, my plan wasn't good enough for them to accept. I understand that. It doesn't hurt me. It just makes me go back to the drawing board to make it a successful plan for them to accept. Whether
How?
it's extent.
How?
Well, it's all about scope, time, and cost. Anything you do is about scope, time, and cost. If it was too
Finance
expensive,
committee told you that your project was too expensive.
if it was too expensive, maybe the timeline was too short. Maybe I got to extend the timeline out so the cost gets spread out.
They're a little angry with you because they told you it was going to be too aggressive. Chris, now what do you do?
I keep going back to myself and saying, why? How can I make it better? How can I make it so they accept it? Maybe they never accept it, but that's my job, to keep trying.
Is it, though? I mean, would you be able to declare a project dead if you thought it had no rightful purpose or an end game? Would you
Well,
advise the board at this point it's not worth going forward?
If I thought something needed to be done to make this town successful or better, it's my job to say it should be done.
So the advocacy, if you will, is well within your job description. You embrace that.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you do in your current position?
Yes, sir.
And how successful would you say you are selling your projects and getting them through for approval?
I'm fairly successful, but like you said, there's going to be times where they're going to reject something, whether it's for a financial reason or whatnot. You just got to go back to yourself and say, how can I bring it back with a better focus, better purpose, better scope, better cost, better timeline?
I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Tina?
Yeah, I have two questions. When I read over what I believe you provided for as the disciplines within facilities management, I think specific to your master's degree, human factors came up as a discipline. Is this familiar to you?
Yes.
Okay. How do human factors play into the strategic vision that you have as Holliston's facility manager?
Sure, and those factors come from IFMA, and that's an International Facilities Management Association. I just wanted to make sure you.
Sure.
Human factors come into play all the time because we got to make sure the facilities management is a field where you got to assure the functionality, the use, the safety of the built environment by incorporating people, place, process, and technology. And people's very important because the people that use the buildings are the human factor. They need to they need to be taken care of. Not only the building needs to be taken care of, but the people need to be taken care of that use the buildings or the facilities, because the buildings gotta reflect how they operate in the building and what they do every day.
You've read the job description. You know that by year 3 you'll be looking at the schools and having oversight on the school buildings themselves and the facilities up there. You were awarded most outstanding student. Congratulations, that is truly a high honor. You were awarded most outstanding master's student when you completed your master's degree at Wentworth Institute of Technology. That's saying something. How do you bring that experience that you had receiving that award, understanding what it meant to you as a student and what that meant for you in terms of accomplishments, how do you bring that over to the schools when you're in the position of facilities manager and there's discussion about, and perhaps there's efforts underway to build a new school? What do you do with that knowledge of the learning environment being critical for the success of these students so that they can each be their own outstanding student? How do you factor that into your decisions with a new school building?
Well, I do know Holliston has a great school system. I think it's nationally recognized, right? So, first of all, every facility has a certain purpose, and a school's purpose is to ensure the education of its students in some form or fashion, or whatever the other details are. There's many of them for a school, but I just believe that.
I guess the question.
I'm sorry if I'm having a hard time understanding the
I wonder
question.
if I should rephrase it.
It's okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay. So the schools are going to be renovation, repair, maintenance, new build, whatever it ends up being with the school is going to be about the learning environment when it comes to the facilities manager position. So I'm testing you. I'm asking you questions, testing your understanding, your experience with a 21st century learning environment for students, what you see as critical pieces in that learning environment based on the facility itself.
I'm sorry.
That's
I didn't quite get the first
No problem.
run. Well, being a new facility, it's going to have to take into consideration the new learning styles of the students. And that's going to be a lot of technology. and how you incorporate the technology into the learning environment, not only for the students, but for the staff and teachers, because they're going to have to teach in that fashion as well. Along with all the other things that a school and a building and a regular facility needs as far as comfort, safety, security, and, the amenities like the gym and the cafeterias and all that need to be very carefully thought out. And, I know when you go through the design and selection board from the state, they have specific architects that really cater to that. I'd have to get more into the details, but I'd be great to be part of that moving forward.
I'm all set.
Okay. And I know I asked you this question the first time around, but there's probably residents watching that weren't watching then.
Our numbers go up on Mondays. And Tuesdays.
And so what is in your mind, the greatest asset that you would bring to Holliston?
I think the leadership part, even though, like John had mentioned, there's no staff, that leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. That's just my definition, right? It doesn't mean you're in charge of people.
Right.
It means you're bringing people together to understand what a vision is set forth by the select board.
Right.
And that's, to me, I think is my greatest strength, is understanding and recognizing how to do that.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And you had mentioned that you would be coming from a job that is much greater than the one you'd be coming to Holliston, but you mentioned in your first interview that you'd like that because then you'd have more time to spend with your family. So I thought that was a good answer, because a lot of people looking at your resume would wonder why you would be stepping down a little bit from your current job.
Yeah, I got 2 kids in high school. The last few years I've been traveling all around the Northeast.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more to the residents of your job, what is required of it now, that why you have to do so much traveling?
Well, we have facilities right now from Bangor, Maine, all the way to mid-New York, all the way down to Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And the organization is growing, and we're buying more and acquiring more property. So when we do that and we make acquisitions, I got to go assess them.
It's a big job, so you have to stay there for quite a while.
No, not necessarily, but I do have to go.
Yeah.
Right, and and I'm not flying. I'm driving 5 hours
Right.
back and forth. So
Yeah.
You're currently employed by this organization,
yes, sir.
and they understand you're interviewing for this position.
Yes, sir. I don't know if they understand I'm interviewing for this position, but they know I'm interviewing.
What kind of software would you use for Holliston? Is it different than what you're using now?
Well, that's a loaded question. There's all different types of softwares. You got to find the best software suitable for what you need to do. And there's IWMS systems, there's CMMS systems, there's IoT type systems, there's energy management systems. The best thing to do is make sure it's all in one space, though, so it all talks to each other. So the key to proven validation on how you move forward on any initiative is the data. And having the data in one place makes it easy to understand, not only on the operational side, but on the financial side. And when you put those two together, you can justify
And you've
things.
used these softwares?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
There's
all I had.
and to answer your direct question, it's hard to say without understanding exactly what it would be used for.
Right, right. After your assessment, you would know. that.
Correct.
Any more questions?
No, sir.
Any more questions? No. Okay, well,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. We appreciate you coming in again. And Mr. Ritter will be getting back to you. We'll be discussing which candidate, so.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Nice to see you again, Chris.
See you later.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Nice, sir.
Okay. Any more discussion that you'd like to have, either of you, on the candidates? What's your comfort level on making a motion? We've had the 15 candidates interviewed by the working group, which narrowed it down to 5, and then we've met and talked about the 5, interviewed the 5, and these are the last 2. So, any comments?
You want to go first or you want me to go first?
I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. So I enjoyed the interviews tonight. I should let people know, should have told you in advance, my approach in second interviews is to be a little bit more aggressive, get the candidates off their spot, give them a little stressors to think about it. Yep. It's probing questions. It's second round of interviews time. I thought the first candidate actually had a significant gap between what I envisioned for the position and what he was demonstrating. I consistently tried to find out, following his assessment, what he would do with information. And I, at one point, tried to introduce the answer in my mind to apply that assessment information to the strategic process. And it just wasn't happening. And I came to the conclusion that based on his experience, he's probably more of a construction coordinator or somebody who takes work orders and direction from others and carries them out probably quite effectively. I didn't quite see the executive level thought process and experience that I expected, so I would not recommend him for hire. Okay. I very much enjoyed Mr. Peasy's presentation. He has a lot of the skills that I was looking for. He moved cleanly from the assessment into the strategic work. You could tell he has some experience doing that. I have a little reservations over somebody who's coming, as you pointed out, Mark, that they're coming from this kind of a position downward, but people make those adjustments in their life all the time, and if he's ready for it, we could certainly use his intelligence, his experience, and his skills. He seems to have a good understanding of what we need. We need somebody who's, first in the ground. They're going to be building something, and it sounds like he's done that. And he expressed a sincere interest in working with our community and adding value. So I was impressed by him. So again, from the beginning, I was looking for somebody who could communicate, who had education to fall back on, and who understood the necessary customer service angles. Mr. Peasy again pointed out tonight, collaboration, which is another form of customer service, was a big part of how he was going to go about his task. So I preferred him, but I want to make sure that there's a fallback in the event that he doesn't, for whatever reason, materialize. I know we have to go through a background process and so forth, so I'll fall back on your thinking about the first round, which I was not part of, on whether or not there were any individuals in that pool that you'd recommend, but at this point I would only recommend Mr. Peasy. That's my opinion.
Gina?
I think that if we were looking at the schools year 1, that there would be a difference there that would be worth taking a look at the first candidate, Mr. Lefter, more seriously. If we were looking again at the schools in year 1, but we're not, we're looking at the schools in year 3, I think that Mr. Peasy alluded to the fact that that would be something you'd have to learn, and I think in year 3 you've got plenty of time to learn that. I do agree that Mr. Lefter, when asked repeatedly and following John's questions, this came out for sure that a lot of it was under the direction of, or under the guidance of, or in not so much even in collaboration with. And this is a leadership position, and to hear that repeatedly when questioned definitely left me thinking that very skilled at what he does, very good at what he does, but not articulating, expressing that ability to step into a leadership position. Certainly heard that from Mr. Peasy, so he would be my first choice based on the interviews tonight.
I, too, was very impressed with Mr. Peasy's second interview. I think that, especially where we're starting this new department, if you will, with one person. That person really has to project leadership skills and collaborative skills. And we had said that we hope to add to the department eventually, but especially in this first year, you really need someone with his skills. And I'm pretty impressed that he went back for his master's in facilities management, too. I thought that was pretty noteworthy. So I will take a motion.
Motion to make a offer to Mr. Christopher Peasy as the next facility manager for Holliston.
Do we have a second?
Second, pending a background check and review of.
Of course. All those in favor?
Before you get, are you at this point, Mr. Chairman, willing to consider the downstream recommendations for hires, or is that something you want to deal with if and when it occurs?
I think that would be if and when it occurs.
Very well. Very well.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So, Jeff, that's
I'll take care of it.
obviously, background check. Subject to background check, I should say.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask for a comfort break? We've been going for almost 3
Absolutely.
hours, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guilfoyle. It is 8:56 and we are back in session.
Ready for another 3 hours, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, so we have the 9 Green Street Committee here and the Board of Health. So if you would come up. And talk to us, please, about the recommendation that you have.
Thank you for this evening. I'm Scott Moles from the Health Director. This is Brian Moran, who is also on the 9th Street Committee, who has been tasked with evaluating the facility for change of use and the cleanup. As part of the charge, we put out an RFP. Here are copies of the RFP. If
Thank
you want
you.
to pass, take this one down. And based on our recommendation, after going through, we had proposals submitted from Beta, PMEC, Lord Associates, Sovereign Consulting, CEC, and Geo Insight. And based on our last 2 meetings of the committee, we recommended that the selectmen enter a contract with Lord Associates. I've got Kevin Connolly. We've tried to contact, but I had a draft letter for him to sign for the board. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
So, and I figured we'd also give the board just how, kind of how we had our ratings of the contractors, and I brought a copy of Lord's actual proposal, so there's copies of that. So right now, we're at the step where our recommendation is to enter the contract with Lord Associates. That way we get the LSP, which is this licensed site professional on record, and licensed with the state. Tina has already started some of the eligible person paperwork that needs to get finalized so we can get the rest of the property reviewed for the contaminations that's there, and then bring it into the next phase 2 steps of the RFP, being the evaluation, and then whether we recommend taking it and making it a parking lot like some of the residents would like, or, rehabbing it. Right now, again, the public consensus seems to be that, best served is going to be best served as a parking lot, but we definitely need to finish the LSP paperwork. I get this, the LSP on record for our representative with the state, and then that way any plans for whichever direction we go with is gone through the proper channels at the state that gets their green light along with ours.
Does the board need any background on why we need to do this? Hire an LSP? Would you like a little summary?
It would never hurt, Brian. Did you say little? It's 9 o'clock.
Well,
so
we don't
brevity rules.
we don't want to take another 3 hours.
We don't, yeah.
Basically, we have a contaminated site.
Yes.
This town has taken it over. The town has the responsibility to move forward with the cleanup. In order to do that, we had to do 2 things. One, we had to file paperwork, which Tina did, to reset the clock on response deadlines. So basically, once that's approved, the town actually has up to 5 years to complete the cleanup. The town can do whatever they want with the property as long as it's brought to a condition of no significant risk to human health or the environment. So we have the paperwork in for the eligible person to reset the deadlines, and this is about hiring an LSP, licensed site professional, so we can move forward with risk reduction, cleanup, whatever we have to do.
Brian, I've read just basically skim this. Is there a timeline for Lord to complete this work?
We haven't given him a deadline yet that we want, but as far as the state deadlines go, to do what we've outlined in the RFP, we have at least a year to do that. And then another year to do phase 3, which phase 3 is evaluation of cleanup procedures, alternatives. That's not in his scope of work yet. We left it open. If we like his work, assuming he's brought on board, we could hopefully move forward with that. Under a change order.
The bids are stunning. Why so low compared to the other three responsive ones?
They are. The reason for that is Lord had prior involvement in the site under the prior owner. So a lot of the required reports that have to be done and resubmitted, he's already done. So there's a huge cost savings there for that. If we had to hire another firm, it wouldn't be that economical.
Mr. Moles, if you may, Mr. Chairman, if I could proceed with questions. From a public health perspective, the building is secure, is that correct?
Building is locked up at the moment.
Does it present any current hazard to individuals that go in the building or around the building?
Well, if you're in the building, you're trespassing, but it's got mold in it, so it's dusty, and then, of course, if you're in the basement, then you'll be subject to, some of the chemicals that are in it, being vapor intrusion type stuff, as it relates to being,
Does it have a fire suppression system in it right now?
No, it does not.
Okay.
I believe
I presume the fire chief knows what's in
Fire
there
chief
and
has
what the
been-
hazards are in the event anything happened up there.
Yep.
Building's in horrible condition. I did a walkthrough with the chief this summer. It's in bad shape.
Mm-hmm. Structurally, in other words, it's not worth reclaiming or...
I think that decision needs to be made. I mean, it could be renovated, it's just a matter of what it would cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you have to control the risk. The vapors coming up through the basement would have to be controlled. There was a system in there. It's not operational anymore to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see where it's feasible at this, to take and make it into either residential or office. I think
Financially feasible.
Financially feasible.
Okay. Last question. Where's the money coming from to pay this contract?
That's where the next steps are in the RFP. That was our charge, to put out the RFP and get somebody selected, and then come back to you with a recommendation on who to hire, and then give us a finance committee person and get this continuing.
I think Tina's got something to say.
Well, I can speak to this. So I had a conversation. We had a meeting on last week, whatever the date was. We kind of went through why this is a priority and why the committee's before the board looking for funding for this LSP. There was a vetting process. The lowest bid has been selected. This is the recommendation from the 9 Green Street Committee is for Lord & Associates. I was not, just full disclosure, I was not at that meeting. I did not vote on the decision to choose Lord & Associates. I had a lengthy conversation with the finance chair today about the need for this to be funded. There are 2 avenues. One is a reserve fund transfer to pay for this contract. The second would be from the select board's account, which it is likely not going to be the funding source. And so in terms of a reserve fund transfer, we obviously need to satisfy some criteria to justify making that transfer. And the strongest argument in order to justify that is the fact that we're in default right now. The town took ownership on I think it was April 17th, but roughly mid-April of 2019. Mass DEP requires that you file a change of eligible person within 120 days, so we did not do that. One could say that we should have, but we didn't have the right team in place, and that the 9 Green Street Committee, and Brian, please correct me on any of this if I'm veering off from the facts. We did not have the 9 Green Street Committee up and running until August. And so
First meeting wasn't until after Labor Day.
Right. So it was late summer before any of this. The complexity of the process that Mass DEP has one go through in order to file the necessary change in status, it was challenging to say the least. So when the property was taken for back taxes in April 29th, none of the right people were in place. There was no committee to recommend what to do next. And so here we are today in default. And when we're in default, I believe, Brian, you mentioned at our meeting, there's a risk of an annual compliance fee.
There will be annual compliance fees, even if we're not in default, but the default fee is, I believe it's $4,300 a year for a 1D default. and it's much, much less if it's brought back into compliance as non-default.
Can I read between a couple of lines, because I thought I heard you mention, Brian, that we have filed some paperwork with DEP to reset the clock. Is that this paperwork? In other words, can we expect to favorably hear from DEP that you're back on track, you've reset the clock, we're no longer in default?
As
Could
Tina
that answer
says-
come out like next week?
As Tina said, we should have done that within 120 days.
Right, but
That's in the
it's done since
regulations.
then.
But however, there is flexibility. Being a municipality, I have to believe the DEP will allow it. So it resets the clock to start from time zero to deal with all this.
And that application's in, so we expect an answer from them.
Application is in.
So theoretically, they could turn around and give us a reset clock tomorrow.
Well, if I'm following, again, this complex technical piece correctly, we still need to provide a Tier 1 update. And we need the LSP to do that. We do not have an LSP on file.
We don't need a Tier 1 update to reset the clock. What we do need, it's really, they used to call it a Tier 1 permit. It's a Tier 1
Notice.
submittal.
Yeah.
It's a one-page form. But I can't, I'm an LSP, but I can't do that because I'm on a committee. So
Right.
the LSP we hire would do that. And it's basically a permit to move forward and undertake the remedial activities that need to be done. Can't do it without that.
And you want to put this on a priority track to be able to know and schedule funding for town meeting too. So the sooner you get the LSP on now, that means we can get in on the schedule with the finance committee to say, okay, we're going to need X amount of dollars to do the phase 2 part of this program for either demo or rehab, and be able to have a number for that section. So you're on good timeline right now, especially if you hire Lord, having previous background information, getting it done sooner rather than posting it off to later.
Part of the problem here is the phase 2 is in the contract. The phase 2 needs to be done to determine how big a problem we really have to deal with that site. And the reason for that is the previous submittals that were done didn't understand that the site is located above an aquifer protection, the town aquifer protection district. And the cleanup standards for that are much, much harder to achieve than it would be if it weren't. So there is the other option of trying to reclassify the groundwater in the downtown area to not be a drinking water aquifer. And then we wouldn't be as concerned with the cleanup costs. It would be much less.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract for Lord Associates in the amount of $13,500, subject to appropriation.
Do we have a second?
Well, I need to understand what you mean by subject to appropriation. So can you?
We're approving the content and execution of the contract. You have to find the money to do it. So you need to now take this approval, once we're voting on this, to the Finance Committee and request a reserve fund transfer and see if it meets their test of the drawer. If it doesn't, you're going to have to wait a few more months.
So this motion includes approval for reserve fund transfer if allowed by the Finance Committee?
Yeah. May I amend my motion to include that action, Mr. Ritter? Thank
So you'd
you.
have to make a presentation.
Yep.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And thank you for your
And then a
work
short,
on it.
quick update on town hall septic system. We've
Yes.
been proceeding with that. Applewood has been, I don't know if you noticed today, was out taking some elevation shots. We met also Friday with the church just to give them an update.
Yeah.
We're hoping to have a design done within the month.
Oh, good.
I don't know if you're going to charge the committee to come up with a RFP and get an estimate for that, but I definitely think that that committee, the sewer, town hall sewer
Yeah.
committee would be on track to be able to at least create a number that's going to need to be reserved for town meeting for something
Yeah,
to
'cause we
happen.
need to get this done.
Something just after town meeting. We did go out, test the soils. We do have adequate soils. Again, Applewood donating their time
Very
to
nice.
taking, get the topo, because Paul Sonia is donating his time and working on the design, and then it's gonna come down to, okay, finalize the design, we've got, kind of a 50% design right now, come up to a 75% design, touch base with the church, come back to you, because we're gonna have to then get into negotiations with the church, and find out what they're gonna need for the easements
Right.
for that, and then, of course, the estimate for construction.
Right.
So
Thank
that'll be, that's moving along fairly quickly too.
Good. Yeah, for spring meeting.
But spring meeting and
Yeah.
town meeting weren't just open too, so.
Yeah.
So there's
as
another,
you know-
there's another cost that you need to
As you know,
be
we're
prepared
not,
for.
we're not allowing any new functions upstairs until this gets resolved, so it's really good that, that it should be ready for town meeting. Because we do get income from up there, and it's needed, so. Thank you so much.
Nope,
Thank you,
for your
Brian.
time.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you for coming.
Good night.
When we get to the budgets, if you could read them, except for the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah, I think we're there, aren't we? No, we've got them.
Okay, we've got some board business. We get the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2020. Do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
Move to accept the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2020 as prepared by the Town Administrator's Office.
Do we have a second?
What day was that? Was that last?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Sorry, it's getting late. I was just
We have a
wondering, was that,
donation,
interview.
again, to the fire department. I think the chief is sending out love letters to the community because he's always getting gifts.
Maybe we should instruct the other department heads to use the same format.
Yeah, I think the other department heads
Share the
need
love.
need to share the love, absolutely.
Well, I move to end this conversation and to accept the gift from Middlesex Savings Bank in the amount of $10,000 to the fire department.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Budgets, Tina.
So our first budget to consider tonight is the solid waste budget.
Jeff, do you want to say anything about that
So,
budget?
we've already talked about this budget once, and I think the board asked me to take a look at some of the businesses within the town in providing some solid waste and recycling opportunities for them. So, Town Council has advised the board, as you recall previously, that the board can establish districts where this services may be provided. So I came up with the assistance of our technology director over here, I came up with a proposed district, a solid waste and recycling district that looks like this, which essentially is the corridor of Route 16, which goes from Concord Street all the way down to School Street. Any businesses along there might be eligible for collection of recycling and solid waste. And
Would
then,
they have to buy their own containers, or how would that work?
well, that's a discussion we'll have in a second here.
Okay.
The other corridor would be along Central Street from Washington to Railroad Street, and Exchange Street from Washington to roughly Railroad Street. So this is a discussion that the board can have. I mean, there's going to be a cost with this. So if a particular business wants to have a recycling cart and a trash cart, it's a discussion for the board, but all residents have been provided the opportunity at no cost. The budget, which is the context of our discussion tonight, is that what I am proposing for a budget is a level-funded budget at $1,287,851. That's a level-funded budget. I did not grab the 1%. As currently proposed, we have approximately an $85,000 surplus in that account. The service, if you were to be able to provide it to the businesses along these districts, I'm estimating that it would be around $20,000 to provide the carts to the businesses. But it's all unknown because
The weight.
the next step, if the board decides to endorse this kind of district, the next step will be to send out a letter to the businesses asking if they really want to participate, similar to what we did with the condos.
Right.
All right? You're going to find, I think, that a lot of the businesses are not interested in participating.
Right.
But those who are will have an option in. And that's where I'm standing at the moment. So, I mean, you can reduce this budget if you choose to, or keep it level funded. There are other programs that we're talking about exploring, like the mattress collection, the food composting collection, textile collections. Those are all unknowns. We don't think there's a lot of money associated with that, but I just don't know.
Jeff, great job putting this together, and thank you, Chris, also for your help on that. This is the direction I was hoping to head in for the last several months. One piece of information that when I broached this topic with the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago, they asked if we could give them any sense of comparison of value to other communities that may offer trash hauling services to businesses. Any intel on that, Jeff?
No, I don't. I mean, the best source would be Harvey. I'd have to reach out to Harvey.
Okay,
to find out.
as a follow-up item, would
Yeah.
you mind checking on that element?
Yep.
Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think we should fund the the solid waste budget at approximately 1.222 million. In other words, take the $85,000, reduce it by the 20,000, keep the 20,000 set aside for possible business inclusion in this model. Mr. Ritter's right. We'll put that money back if it's not needed. But as I've strongly felt since we rolled out this program last July, and you made this remark earlier tonight about a business, we need to show ourselves willing to accept and bring businesses into our service sector. They pay these taxes. They should be given the opportunity to participate in the program. And given the scope of this budget, I don't think it's a lot to ask. And I would recommend an amendment to the budget to reflect that.
And so this would be, if you want to repeat the scope of the business district for residents so they understand.
As prepared by Mr. Ritter, and I think I'd have to concur, it's the corridor of Route 16 from Rossini Corner all the way up to School Street. It includes the boundaries of Central Street from Washington to Railroad, and from Exchange, Washington Street to Railroad.
Okay.
And
that would be, the feeling of the board was this would be the immediate downtown business district of.
For this purpose only.
This purpose only.
Right.
Do you mind if I ask a couple questions?
Go right ahead.
Jeff, when you talk about $20,000, you're talking about roughly there are 50 businesses that you'd identified along this corridor, and like you say, they won't all opt in.
No.
Because
But
some
you're
of them
planning
want.
for, right, you're
want-
planning for the 50 to possibly opt in, then when you come up with
It's the
the
worst
20.
case scenario, as far as I can see.
Okay. and the-
Some of them want to use their dumpsters, and to be clear, we would not be emptying
Right.
dumpsters that
This is
people
the
have.
program the
This-
residents have. This is pretty much for small businesses.
Right.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
The $20,000 is for the amendment to the contract.
No. Well, let me say,
It's new cost.
we would have to have a further discussion with Harvey about rolling this out.
Okay.
So,
Adding these accounts
Yeah.
to the existing routes.
Because I'm just wondering about the wheeler, should we, so I hear your point, I think we should be looking at budgets to trim as much as possible when we can, and I think this is an opportunity to do just that. I have two thoughts on that, though. One is I wonder, do we need to factor in that the wheelabrator cost will go up slightly if we do bring in more carts? It may not be significant, it may all be in the noise and not worth thinking about, but I just put that out there for consideration. Then the second thing that I would put out there is that there's been a lot of thought, a lot of work and a lot of interest in those additional programs like mattress recycling, like composting food waste, and like textiles. And I would not want the budget so trim that we can't consider those if there are costs associated. So I'm just left with that as well.
Do you want to make an amendment to his
Well, so now I
motion?
feel like we're negotiating here on a dollar amount.
I'm not
so
sure I heard from any firms that would require us to invest funds for their service, and I'm thinking textiles. And with
Right.
regard to the composting,
Yep.
that's an individual subscription. I'm not sure I would embrace the idea that the town should pay for that. I think we should bring them into the town and offer them the opportunity to get their service where they want to go, at least in year one. But that's just me.
Any more comments?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Do you think that the dollar amount John's talking about is a little tight?
I do think it's a little tight, but I also recognize that this is my first go-around, and I am more than willing to go with the experience of those who've been through a budget process before on something like this. So I put out my 2 thoughts for consideration. If the board doesn't feel that they're worth amending further, then I'm comfortable with the recommendation.
With what we know today.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with that.
Every budget's a snapshot, things change, but
Jeff,
Fair enough.
with what John recommended, do you think that's doable? You would ask for level funding, but we're talking about trimming a little.
So if I understand your number was correct, it was 1,222,000?
I did the math. 1,202. Excuse me. Oh,
Oh.
beg your pardon. Nope.
222.
Sorry, Jeff. Hold on. You correct. 1,222,851. Sorry about that.
222,851, that's what I
So
did. I did not.
Giving
get
back 65 out of the 85 and
Yep.
holding the 20 for the
Yep.
business expansion.
It's tight. I mean, I think it'll be close, I think. But I think we got it.
You think it's too tight, or?
No, I think it's okay.
All right.
So I'll make a recommendation to approve the proposed trash recycling district for businesses model as presented by Mr. Ritter.
And with some follow-up information you asked him about.
Yeah, other towns.
That's with regard to the program, the financial side, but I think we have to adopt the business district
Okay.
as bounded in this.
Now, you already had a motion before this. Has that changed at all?
So we're just, okay, we'll get to the financial motion in a second, we'll reiterate that, but I think what
Okay.
we have is we have to adopt the business district.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I moved to, well, so, boy, it's late. Okay. Did you make a motion to adopt the business district?
I just did.
All right, then I second that.
Trash and recycling district.
Proposed
Trash
trash
and
recycling
recycling.
business district.
Forgive the 3 hours in lapse there in judgment. I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so I'll
Now-
reiterate the motion to fund the solid waste budget at $1,202,851 for FY '21. The expectation that Mr. Ritter will take the opportunity for the approximate $20,000 savings, discuss the program options with E.L. Harvey, and garner additional information about other communities and whether or not businesses are welcomed into their programs. This will be fodder used with the Finance Committee to help them understand what this number means.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Jeff. Good job on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, you want to talk about the select board budget?
Next in line is IT, and we have Chris here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Call him up.
IT. Chris, come on
Do
up.
you entertain taking actually the building inspector since he's got kids at home
Sure.
first?
What a gentleman.
I'm here to talk about the IT budget.
Excellent.
Give it all to building. Good evening.
Good evening.
I hope you have the version that Sharon sent out today. If you don't, I have copies.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's pass those along. There was some confusion. We had generated a new account line, and somehow it didn't make it onto the primetime version until about 4 o'clock today. So, essentially, we are level funded across the board, other than a few changes where last year we had a capital purchase of the permitting software, which we're actually going to implement fully on February 3rd. This year it changes over to a maintenance fee to maintain the IT support and cloud storage and all the other things that go along with that. And then we've added in a capital line to pick up the online payment system that is associated with that software so that we can accept credit cards, ACH-type payments, and other things, and it automatically notifies the collector of payments, as opposed to currently we will be in a manual-based system for this first few months of operation.
Is that Square Technology? No, that's not Square.
It's People GIS, which is the same company that we use for our GIS software, so.
You changed some of your building inspector fees this
Correct.
fiscal year. Are we seeing any change in in terms of revenues down here at the bottom? Are you seeing any impact of those new fees?
In general, everything is looking good. The revolving account is increasing in a positive direction, which it usually does anyway. But no, the fee structure seems to have done what we expected it to do. If you're looking at this discrepancy between the last few years and where we are at the midpoint of this year, we've had a few less of the big commercial build-outs that we've had in the last year or two. We're sort of into the construction phase of a number of these medical marijuana facilities and things like that. So we've seen a less of these sort of hundreds of thousands of dollar kind of permit fees versus the thousands of dollars kind of permit fees. But no, everything seems to be relatively on track as far as the fees go. Any other questions from the board?
Any questions, John?
I do. Chris, just a couple of houses. Just bear with me. I'm trying to look at these numbers. So it would appear as though your request fiscal year 2021 budget totals 154,000. That's sort of what you wanted, but you have to foot to the 1% growth, so you've got to make some reductions. Does that include bringing the salary line down by $566? Can I read that correctly? Or it goes
No.
up? So
No. So
All right, let's go back, let's go back.
so the top salary line is the contract salary that was put into place midway through this last year, which I think is what the FinCom has
that's my question.
directed us to go with. So there's no increase on that.
Which number is that? The 87 or the 88?
88,041 is the number in the contract, and so we're just holding that with the 0%.
What's
for
the
next
five?
fiscal year.
What's the 500? Okay, that's the growth from the original.
Correct, which
I got it. Okay.
included a partial year at that
Got
rate.
it.
Yep.
Okay, so then you go. So you're under. You're under guideline.
Yes.
I see it. Okay. What portion of the 135,000 is funded from the revolving fund?
Sorry, which 135,000?
The salary line. Total 5,100 line.
Zero of this two set. The salaries that are funded out of the revolving account are the plumbing inspector and wiring inspector.
Okay.
And their associated costs.
156. Okay. I have no other questions.
Tina?
None, thank you.
I do not either.
Motion to approve the budget request of the building department.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
sir.
Thanks, Chris. Good night.
And now the IT budget.
My budget did not change, but I do have a copy for you.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Thank you.
That's a sticky.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Basically, the first line item is the salary, which is what was contractually agreed upon. The next line is the professional services, and basically level funding that. That's antivirus software and a hardware contract for the servers, backup system. Those contracts for the first year, since the last 3 years, are starting to go up a little bit, but I've been able to adjust it with our Maya grant. They covered our room alert monitoring system, so I've for $225 for the next 10 years. So I was able to use that savings to offset some of the costs this year. Communications, again, we're level funding. That's phone system and any postage I need to pay. Office supplies for $200. Again, that's being level funded. Being in technology, I don't usually have a big need for office supplies. And then the last two, purchase of computers 3 years ago, the FinCom encouraged and also funded a computer replacement cycle where we do 30 computers and 1 server a year. As I put in one of the risks, computer prices are going up because of technology tariffs. This year we were paying about $550 per computer. That has actually gone up $40 in the past 2 months per computer. And then the last line item of $7,750 is basically every other purchase. Like if I have a printer I need to purchase or parts for a printer or a computer, that comes out of that line item for a total of $149,536, and I am a little bit under guideline.
Chris, you spoke about the grant that offsets some of the professional services, I believe,
Correct.
purchase services.
Yes.
Are there? You've had a very successful fiscal year 20 to date in being awarded grants. Are there other areas of your budget that grant money is affecting for the benefit of your budget?
Not really. I mean, last year we put a wireless network throughout the entire town buildings. That was about a $48,000 grant. So that that would have come from either capital or something. But because we got the grant, we've covered for 3 years on all the support contracts and stuff like that for that.
And you say you mentioned something about software.
Professional services is we have both software and hardware contracts in there. Every year we have a annual subscription to an antivirus program. That's about $625. We kind of work with the schools to get that pricing. They've locked in a 4-year price lock on that.
Okay.
This is the last year of that.
Okay.
Then they're going to be negotiating, and hopefully, again, they'll extend that cost to us again. And then there's also we have a hardware warranty on all of our servers in town, so that's all kind of built into the professional services.
Chris, is there room to bring that budget up to 1% by adding a few $100s?
If I was to add it somewhere, I would add it into the purchase of computers, just because I'd like to get a couple more computers.
Do you know how much the delta is? It looks like about $300.
Probably.
You said 40 more. In the past 2 months, you've seen $40 more per computer.
Yes.
Yeah. And you buy about 300 computers a year?
No, we buy 30 computers.
I'm sorry,
here.
30. Sorry. I think that might be your delta.
So I'd make a recommendation that the technology director amend his budget to 1% and add the delta to his purchase of computers.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Good luck, Chris. Thanks.
Okay.
Getting there.
Public buildings. Jeff?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm proposing a level-funded budget, or on-guideline budget, let's put it that way. The guideline number is $285,426. I'm proposing a $285,426 budget. The average 4-year expenditure for FY 16, 17, 18, 19 is $254,747. And this budget here is primarily used for, in support of all of our public facilities, all of our public buildings. If we needed to, for instance, there was some work that was done not too long ago at the library that we needed to have some funds made available. We use this budget to do that. So it also pays for all of our energy utilities for the town hall, the 1750 Washington Street, golf course, some contractual services, grounds and building maintenance, copy machine service contracts, equipment maintenance, postage machines, custodial services, which takes care of this building here, some testing at the former landfill on Marshall Street, and our communications allocation as well.
So this would be something the new facilities manager is going to be...
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to set up like a purchase order system, so I can try to monitor what he's trying to buy
Okay.
and what the expenses are going to. But ultimately, I see in FY '22, this budget probably being transferred under his jurisdiction.
Right. What about some, coming in at 1% so that you can buy the new facilities manager a computer and some things that he'll need?
Well, I think
I mean,
that,
it's going to be obvious that he's going to need some.
Well, I want to call your attention to the fact that town appropriated $60,975 in FY '20 for the position to have as salary, benefits, $1,500 for equipment, and $100 in supplies. That was based on a January 1st start date. The individual's likely not going to be starting this month, so
Right.
you've got a salary savings baked into that $60,000. There's some favorability that I'm sure we could work with if we needed to in FY '20.
Okay.
So, but for FY '21, looking at it, this is one of the things that we're going to have to talk to the Finance Committee about, Jeff, because this position for FY '21 doesn't have a home, right?
Well, for now, it was going to be under DPW, I thought.
Right, but when we put out this budget for FY '21, we envisioned a $146,000 plan that included a vehicle, salary, and so forth. So we need to find a place for that.
Yeah.
As we build this, and I wonder if, well, it's going to be under DPW in FY '21, so Sean's got to know this.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm meeting with Sean and Ben from the Finance Committee on Thursday.
Yeah, I'll see him tomorrow morning, too. I'll give him a heads up.
Okay.
All right, but,
Yep.
Yeah.
that's,
We got to make sure we've got
right.
equipment, vehicle, whatever.
But I think based on the flexibility of that budget, he should be okay, at least for now.
Okay.
I have two quick questions. One is the line item 53006, which is the Marshall Street testing.
Yes.
It's requested for fiscal year '21, $32,357. With the solar landfill project happening, do they then handle all of that testing?
No,
Or
no.
We're still responsible for that piece? That doesn't fall off?
That's
of-
correct. It's
Okay.
an ongoing question with DEP as to
Yeah.
when the testing can discontinue.
Okay.
We don't have an answer on that.
Okay,
But-
okay. And then I feel like I keep coming back to this, but when the conversation at town meeting in October was that there was this is not the fund for the senior center. The capital request was removed from not approved at the town meeting, and there was reference at the time to a building budget, but I don't see anything in here that looks like the type of line items that will go to the kind of repairs that were being talked about at the senior center.
Well, grounds, 52400, grounds/building maintenance.
Yep.
We've expended $26,295 as of December 31st. We have, out of an appropriation of $52,000, so it's just under half.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That line item can be used to offset expenses for the building at the senior center.
Okay.
It's just that we watch this budget really closely, this number very closely, because as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year,
Okay.
if we have additional funds left over, then we can apply them.
Okay, so maybe the conversations are unrelated, but in terms of approving this budget tonight, and then the other conversation I'm trying to have, which is the senior
So we
center.
try to
can
keep,
talk about
we
that
try to keep
later.
money in reserve in that
Sure.
account until,
Okay.
because something could happen.
Yep.
And we
Right.
don't,
Okay, I have no other questions.
Motion?
Motion to approve the public buildings budget at $285,426. Is that the right number, Jeff?
yes, 285,426.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Wastewater treatment, Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, this is the treatment plant down on Linden Street.
Yeah.
And we have, I'm proposing a 1% increase at $92,708. And the amount that was approved in last May was $91,790. The four-year average is $86,612. So we're pretty close to being on target with this budget. And we've expended, as of December 31st, 2019, which again is just under half the budget. So we're right on target as far as this budget is concerned. This is one of the sort of the moving targets out there because you never know what's going to happen when you have a mechanical operation going on.
Right.
I'm anticipating that this budget will be probably complemented with an article at town meeting in May for some additional facility repairs and maintenance that are needed. We haven't put any money into that facility really in a
Is
long
it
time.
currently compliant? Because I know you had a compliance finding last year.
It's in compliance based on the repairs that we're currently undertaking. We've got about $3,000 or $4,000 in surplus in that from a previous article, but they're looking at upgrades and in the vicinity of probably $20,000.
So I'll make a motion to approve the proposed wastewater treatment budget for FY21.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jeff. Sealer.
There's nothing to really talk about here. This is a revolving fund. The revenues that he takes in goes into a revolving account, and he expends from that account.
Okay.
Does it need approval or just does that an FYI?
You can make an approval if you want.
Could you tell us the amount that he takes in expense, please?
He has taken in, last year, $8,647. As of December 31st, 2019, he's brought in $4,232. So again, we're right on, just about right on
I'll make a motion to approve the sealer's budget for FY21 as stated with the expectation that he may expend up to the amount collected in FY21.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The selectmen budget.
So this is the only one out of all my budgets that are over budget.
So it's not my clothing budget that's doing it.
Your clothing budget is doing it. This budget line item it's over budget is
Due to legal fees.
absolutely. It's budget line item 53000, which is professional services, which is our labor council, our town council, and any related litigation that goes on during the course of the fiscal year. We have.
And that's over and above our flat fee that we pay.
Yes, yes. So that is looking at about a $11,000 increase. I mean, I could level fund it, but it's not a realistic number. And you gotta have a real number in there. I think you have to have a real number in there, so.
How much have we spent in legal fees for the last 3 years?
I don't have that detail here.
So is it professional services, Jeff?
Yes, professional services, 53000. I can tell you that we have appropriated this fiscal year $53,000 in that line item. As of December 31st, we've spent $49,961. So we're approaching the precipice here. And as we continue to get sued, the more money we spend. So it's looking at $11,276.
Lawyers, you know that? Until you need them.
Yeah,
Gone.
you need them.
My only question here would be that it's a 22%, it's a significant increase over the previous, which I totally understand what you're saying and why it's in there. I wonder, is there some sort of review process that this board should go through to look at this trend? Is there some way that we can put a little bit of oversight, not in the decision to change the budget, but in terms of a little bit of a better understanding as to what's driving these kinds of costs? I don't judge why that is, but is there some process that should complement this quite significant change, especially given the area in which we're seeing this change, which is liability and
I probably
legal?
could provide the board with a better tracking system of the cost, the town council expenses on a monthly basis.
Okay.
That way there you would have a spreadsheet showing how much is going into litigation and which pieces of the litigation are costing you money. That I could easily do. But, you know, a $53,000 budget for a town council, for a community of this size,
It's not too
is
bad.
extremely modest.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah,
just tell
right.
you
So
that.
there's some comparisons that can be done to other communities of our size to say
Oh, yeah.
that we have been, the prior proposed or budgeted amounts are probably low. is what
Similar
you're saying?
communities
Yeah.
commonly spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on litigation.
Well, you
And
have
town
everything
council.
from union and
I think you're going to need that detail for the finance committee, my friend. So
11,000 is not a very significant increase in my view, but that's fine, I can do that.
So I'll make a motion to approve the select board presentation of the budget, including an $11,000 increase in the 5,300 line.
Second.
Thank you.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. I believe that's the last budget.
To make a motion to appoint Mr. Donald Bates to the OPEB board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Bates, congratulations if you're listening.
And thank you for your interest.
And thank you for your time and knowledge. Okay, we will take a motion to adjourn, unless there's any other business.
I just want to extend congratulations to Holliston's own Anna Hine on being listed in the top 100 swimmers in the world.
Wow.
Her mother would never brag about it, so it's up to us, Mr. Chairman, to get the word out.
Absolutely, that's what we're gonna do.
I will point out then that you can congratulate her anytime you want in person. She will be doing an internship with Brian Clapp downstairs soon, right, Anna?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It is 9:49. Thank you, and good evening.